To the Atlanta Home Builders Association, and I was a little intimidated the first time I went to teach. I said, oh man, I'm going to get up in front of all these builders, and I'm sure you all have had experience before. You do a lot of the new construction inspections where some builders are a little bit less friendly than others, right? I mean, I've been cussed out before I even got in my truck. I said, well, what'd I do? I just don't like you being here. That's it. And that's all I had to do was show up to get cussed out. So I said, oh man, I'm going to get up in front of all these builders. I know they're going to be picking at me. And learn pretty quick, there's not a lot of builders that know a lot of code. In fact, I've run into some builders, I don't know if they ever have looked in a code book before. That's up to their question. But I'm not here to bash the builders. My whole family's in building, and I come from that background. A couple things about the presentation we're going to be doing today as Will gets the up and going here. We'll get our projector going. There's a couple things I want to hopefully do. I mean, most of all, I'm here just to hopefully give y'all some stuff that might help you. Now, the reality is, in this room are some of the, probably not just some, probably the most knowledgeable home inspectors in the state. Some of you guys know a ton. You've been doing it way longer than me, and you know way more than me. And so I'm not here to try to impart my knowledge from some high point down to everyone else. I'm just here to share a couple things I've seen and found, hopefully help you out, make you do better inspections for your clients. Happier clients mean better reviews mean more money in your pocket, hopefully. So that's all I'm trying to do here today. Some of the stuff we're covering, you'd only be able to probably see if you're doing multi-phase, like a pre-drywall inspection. Some of it you'd be able to, would apply to a final inspection on new construction. And some of it would only apply maybe if the house is 10 years old. But basically what we're going to do is we're going to walk through Chapter 7 of the IRC. For those of you that are new here, this is the International Residential Code. And it is the code that we have adopted here in Georgia. We're going to go through Chapter 7 because that mainly deals with wall claddings. And there's some sections and flashing on there. And I might steal a little bit from Chapter 9, which has to do with the roof coverings as well. Because there's some flashing issues that can affect your walls big time that are underneath the roof section. Alright, so that's what we're going to do. I'm going to try and keep this interesting. I mean, you think, alright, we're walking through a whole chapter of code. Oh my goodness, line by line. Hopefully we can spice it up a little bit and won't be too many folks falling asleep. Alright, so let's get going here. Let's see, I guess I need to make sure my little pointer here is turned on. Where do I point this at? Well, there we go. Point it back that way. Alright. Alright, so this was a house. I actually did not inspect this house, but I have a realtor that I work with who's very knowledgeable, and he sent me all these pictures. This is a lot of what I deal with up the north side of Atlanta. Houses like this were built in the mid-2000s, early 2000s. And now you walk up, it looks like a nice house, right? Now if I was looking at this house from the street, and I was thinking about siding and flashing, where would be the first place you would want to run and look at real quick? Roof to wall intersections. So we got pretty obvious one. We got, of course, some here, roof to wall intersections over top of the front entrance. But man, these gables over the garage coming down those sidewalls, that's a hot spot right there for problems. And it certainly was on this house. Here some of the stone had been starting to be pulled off, but this is what it looked like. Wow. So what do we have here? What type of siding is this?
Well, synthetic stone.
Yeah, so we got manufactured, adhered stone, all some people call it cultured stone, fake stone. I like to call this lumpy stucco. That's all it is, right? It's, we're going to get into stucco in a minute, but it's basically installed the same way as stucco in a lot of ways. But that's not a good sign right there. From inside, there wasn't anything obvious wrong, but once they saw the outside, they said, oh, we want to poke some holes and start looking around. And there had been water coming down inside the wall cavity, probably since the day the house was built. And this was at 10 years old now. And then there's a little bit of a funny picture. There's no good way to orient this, but this is the floor, and so your band was all rotted out. They had studs that were all rotted out. Price tag to repair this came out to $28,000. So we go back and we say, all right, how did this happen? This house is not that old. I think when this happened, it wasn't even 10 years old. It was 8 years old. 8-year-old house. $28,000 worth of water damage. See how did it happen? Because the builder didn't know what this is. What's this?
Diverter flash.
Kick out flash.
Kick out, diverter flashing, call it either one. When I take this to the builder's class, I say, have any of y'all ever seen one of these? 'Cause I swear, on the new construction inspections I do, I rarely ever see a kick out at a roof-to-wall intersection. Now, are these required by code?
Yes, sir.
Yep.
You bet they are. We'll cover that in a little bit. But they're not there. Rarely ever do I see them actually installed. And if they are installed, they're usually not right. I got some funny pictures of attempts at kick-out flashing that you can tell me whether or not you think they're going to work, but we'll get there in a little bit. Yeah, $28,000 worth of damage because they didn't put a $2 kick-out flash on. You can get one of these at Home Depot for $2.50, by the way, all right? I put on my own house a while back. So $2.50 could have saved $28,000 if they just known or cared enough to put it on. So it just shows us that some of the details we cover today seem like not that important. Like, oh, this is minute little details. How important can these little things be? Well, potentially they can be really important. You got water going inside a wall for 8 years. That might not end too well. Missing kick-out flashing right there is what costs it. So the details can make all the difference. And that's why I stress to the builders. I say, guys, listen, some of these things, even like little tiny details, you get mad at us inspectors when we come along. Oh, he's just nitpicking at my house. I said, we're not nitpicking for writing up stuff for the code citation. There's a reason why I got in the code, all right? Someone wasn't just sitting around saying, what else can we throw in the code for the fun of it? There's a reason why this stuff's in there. So we're going to start walking through chapter 7, all right? We start at the beginning of chapter 7, and if you got a code book, you can flip through with me as we go along. Keep me honest. You might catch me on something where I get a little off. If I do, let me know. I'm more than happy to listen to you. So we got just a general code, like most of the sections in the IRC. Starts out the general kind of umbrella code. And here's our kind of our umbrella code for this chapter. It says, the provisions of this chapter shall control the design and the construction of interior and exterior wall covering for all buildings. So that's where we're going for this chapter. Pretty straightforward. 701.2 then gets into insulation. This is still kind of another umbrella code, but it says that products sensitive to adverse weather shall not be installed until adequate weather protection for the installation is provided. Now, when I hear that, I first think, okay, don't put your drywall up till you actually got a roof on. And you got your boot flashings on around your vent stacks so that you don't have water coming down in on your drywall, that sort of stuff. But there's a couple other scenarios where this could come into play. When you see a bunch of plywood or OSB sitting out in the rain for weeks and weeks and weeks on end, you say, is that going to make a big deal? It could. It could. Most of the manufacturers of the subfloor materials say this is water resistant. It's okay if it gets wet. But they also say you got to be careful it doesn't get wet too much for too long. So you can run into all sorts of problems. I'm sure we've all been in a house, those of you that do framing inspections, you start walking through and the joints of all the OSB are buckled up, or the subfloor is all buckled up because it had water sitting on it. Water came in because the windows weren't installed yet. It blew in, they had an inch of water sitting on that subfloor, and the builder didn't bother. I see builders up there sending the guy around with a leaf blower, blow all the water off after a big rain. But if you don't do that, it sits there for days on end, buckle up your subfloor all around. You see this a good bit, roof decking. See anything with that roof? Would you want to buy that house? Now, is that going to be a big deal as far as structure? Nah, it's probably fine. Just looks funny. What happened there, do you think?
You're at Peachtree Corners.
I can't tell you how many times this year I've been on job sites and I look over, it's raining, and the jokers next door are either putting tar paper down in the rain, and I'm just thinking, what are you doing? You're trapping all the moisture underneath your tar paper. So yeah, the joints of the roof deck are buckling up there, probably because of moisture. So yeah, just, there's a code there about make sure stuff doesn't get too wet as you're installing it. So we got to keep that in mind. Now, going to R702. Here's our next section. This is interior coverings, and we're going to skip this whole section. All right? Covers your plaster wall coverings, gypsum board, up north especially the vapor retarders. All that is in this section. We're going to skip it. But I'm more worried about water getting in. All right? That's my big concern today. So if you want to look at that section later, you can. We're going to go to R703. The rest of the chapter is under R703. There is no R704. So, exterior coverings. All right, now under this section, we got another one of these umbrella codes. And these umbrella codes are great. I was talking to someone earlier about if you're doing new construction, you probably want to be making code citations in your report for the stuff you're writing up. There are now some builders in their contract with their buyers who said we will not accept an inspection report unless there's code citations in it for every item. So what you don't want to have happen is that client pay you $500 to do an inspection. You write up a report, it gets sent to the builder, there's no code citations in it, and he takes it and throws it in the trash and says, yeah, this is invalidated, it doesn't meet our contract. Your buyer's not going to be happy with you then, so we want code citations. But these umbrella codes are great for code citations. You can put a lot of stuff underneath them. So I love my umbrella codes. This one just says, exterior walls shall provide the building with a weather-resistant exterior wall envelope. Now there's a lot that could mean right there. That could be interpreted in a lot of different ways. The first question that comes up to me would say something like, what about the actual cladding or the siding? Should the siding itself be weather resistant? Not waterproof, but at least weather resistant. What do y'all think?
That's its intent.
Yes.
What it says.
Now there's some types of siding that moisture will migrate through. Brick, the big one. Stucco, another one. Water goes through stucco. You paint it real good, it might stop it, but in and of itself, the mortar is not waterproof. The brick certainly isn't waterproof. So there are some types of siding that we anticipate water can and probably will migrate through. And that's why we really care about what's behind that siding. But if I'm walking around inspecting a house that has cement board and there's big old holes in the cement board and the builder says, oh, it's okay, we got house wrap back behind there. I'm probably going to bring this code up and say, no, we want the siding at least to be weather resistant, okay? And we'll get into house wrap and all that in a minute. There's a lot we can do with this code here. Certainly the wall envelope as a whole needs to repel water at some level. And when I say envelope, I think we're talking about the siding and the house wrap, the WRB back behind it. So we just talked about should the cladding openings in the siding. He said, I don't like to see that house wrap, and we'll talk about some reasons why in a minute. All I know is that this does not meet R703.2. There's no way that's okay. And this is a final inspection. They already had their CO on this. So, oh yeah. I don't know about where y'all are at, but what I find up on the north side of Atlanta, where I do most of my inspections, and I do almost just new construction now. I have other guys on my team that handle the resales. I find that the county typically does not look at the siding, period. They do not look at the siding, anything to do with the siding or anything to do with the roof. The county either does not really care about or does not look at. That's why I created this class, by the way. When my inspection reports on new construction come in, there's about this much on exterior and roof. And in the inside and everything else is usually much shorter. So I spend maybe half the inspection just on the outside of the house and the roof. That's usually where I find all my code violations. Not all, a lot. So we know that's not okay. Stuff like this. This R703.2. No, that does not meet code. Sorry, I said R703.1. All right, 703.1.1. Water resistance. The exterior wall envelope shall be designed and constructed in a manner. Now this is kind of expanding on the code we just talked about, that weather resistant envelope. So two things here that it's got to do. One, it's got to prevent the accumulation of water within the wall assembly. How's it going to do that? By providing a water-resistant barrier behind the exterior veneer. So we talk about water's going through your brick. There better be something behind that brick to stop the water and get rid of it. Talk about getting rid of it. Here's the second part. A means of draining to the exterior the water that enters the assembly. So this is really important right here. The first thing I'm thinking about, whether the house is 20 years old or brand new, is there something behind the siding to stop water if the siding's not waterproof? And then secondly, is there a way to get rid of that water if it gets back behind there? So there's all sorts of things you'll see where cement board siding, they come, they take the mortar, a little parge coat of mortar on the base of the side around the whole house because they want to make it look pretty. This might be a slab house. They got 6 inches clearance at the bottom of the side, and they take mortar and seal up the bottom of the cement board all around the house. I've seen that so many times. How's water getting out from behind that cement board then? Doesn't meet R70311. It's got to have a means for the water to get out. Doesn't matter if it's stucco, brick, cement board, wood. Doesn't matter. Water's got to be able to get out if it gets back behind there. So this is one of the codes I use the most all the time. Very helpful code there. So R703.1.1 talks about water resistance. You go to .1.2, it talks about wind resistance. You don't want siding blowing off your house. And there's some metrics they use in there to test, so it's got to meet some standards, this, that, and the other. You basically don't want this happening. Largely, the only type of siding that's going to be blowing off the house is probably vinyl siding. All right, around here, you're down in a hurricane zone. I don't know about down there, but in Florida, South Florida, if you're in Miami, everything can blow off, I guess. But around here, the only type of siding I've ever seen blow off a house is vinyl siding.
No house right.
So that's another thing. When you're looking at these houses, Atlanta area, at least North Atlanta where I'm at, any house built before about 2002 with vinyl does not have any house wrap behind it. None of them. There's nothing. It wasn't required by code. Now you might say manufacturer's instructions still required it back then, but it was not required by code before 2000. When we adopted that in 2001. So yeah. Just curiosity, if you got that house built in 1998, you're starting to look at it, inspect the siding, peel back a joint on the vinyl, look back behind there, it's bare OSB. You can make a big deal about that to your client.
Write it up.
You definitely want to at least mention it. Say, hey, there's no house wrap. What might not be required by code at the time of construction. Just want to make you aware, though, this could make the house susceptible to moisture damage. I don't need to kill the deal over maybe, but I'm at least going to make them aware of it, that's for sure. So yeah, in vinyl house, I'm going to walk up and peel back a joint and look back behind there, see what's going on behind it.
You even want to mention the fact that any small holes that you typically find in the vinyl siding in this kind of house, it has to be repaired. You can't just leave those little bitty stone holes and weed whacker holes and stuff on your siding.
Yeah, for the sake of the video, he was just making a comment about if there is no WRB or water-resistant barrier house wrap back behind the vinyl, then any little hole from a lawnmower or weed whacker such, which we see all the time on the vinyl siding, would really need to be repaired because otherwise it's an opportunity for water to get straight to the OSB and begin to cause moisture damage. So that's exactly right. So wind resistance, I'm not going to go into that because it's just pretty much said it has to meet a couple of standards. But then we go to R703.2. This is our water resistive barrier, the WRB or the house wrap. We're going to spend a little bit of time on this. Now I recognize that most of the time we're doing inspection, we can't see the whole house wrap. It's a final inspection, it's all covered up with siding, right? If it's a framing inspection and the siding has not been installed, do you report on house wrap defects to the WRB? Do you do that?
Yes.
You do?
Part of the framing inspection.
Now technically that's not in our standards of practice. I went and double checked. I think maybe we could add it to our framing protocol that we have. That'd be a suggestion. There's maybe a couple other suggestions I would make. along the way we could do to update our standards at some point in time. But if you want to take good care of your client, why wouldn't you report on it? That would be my point. Even if it's not in our standards, if the siding has not gone up, I'm going to walk around that entire house during the frame inspection. I'm going to know anything wrong with that house wrap that I see. And there always is stuff wrong with the house wrap. Just about all. So we're going to spend a little bit of time on this because even if you're not doing inspections where you see the house wrap on a regular basis, just knowing how it's supposed to be installed will make you a better inspector. If you only worry about stuff you can see on a final inspection or a house that's already been built, you'll have one level of knowledge. If you know how stuff's supposed to have been built when it's being built, you'll have a whole other level of knowledge that makes you a much, much better inspector. So we're talking about this real quick. So when we talk about our water-resistant barrier, it says it can be felt or an other approved water-resistant barrier. Now down here we use Tyvek-like materials in Georgia 90% of the time. If it's going to be cement board back behind there, if it's going to be adhered to the manufactured stone or brick, they might use something else, so they might double the house wrap behind the stone. You see that a lot. Behind the brick, they usually will still use like a felt paper, tar paper, something along those lines. That's mainly what we're seeing now. There are other options. There are rubber membranes that they're running down the whole length of the wall. I've seen a couple times when they're doing like a real stone or a brick. But there's several different types of water-resistant barriers you may see. But there's some basic codes that apply to all of them. One, on the horizontal joints, which are typically running between the first floor and the second floor. You got a joint because the house wrap's only the roll is only so tall. You need to lap those joints 2 inches. And when it gets to a vertical joint, which you usually see around your corners, somewhere close to a corner, there's a joint in the house wrap, it needs to lap 6 inches. We don't see that a lot. A lot of times they lap at 2 inches on a vertical joint even. And right at a corner, that's a hot spot to look for, but it does need to lap properly. As I talked about here, it's not actually part of our standards of practice for framing protocol, but it is a good thing to look at. Now, when we get to the 2018 IRC, which we'll adopt presumably January of 2020. Am I right on that, Chris? Make sure I got my date right. We're going to have a little something added in there which says, hey, if you're using these other approved materials, your Tyvek type materials, they have to be installed according to the manufacturer's instructions. Now that's common sense, and we say that's got to happen, but actually putting that in the code as a change for the upcoming code cycle. The reason I bring this up is because if they actually are using Tyvek, the instructions are very, very specific. They give details on how to do everything. Around every sort of penetration, they have a special detail they want. Very, very specific instructions on how it's to be installed. Now what I found is a lot of the builders kind of have their own brand. The big boys have their own brand of the house wrap. You go to pull their instructions up and it's 3 sentences. No pictures, no diagrams, no nothing. That doesn't help us much. But if they're actually using Tyvek, there's a lot that they want them to do. It's just a picture of a house wrap here. I don't see anything too egregious on this, but it's what it's going to look like at this stage. Now, as I said, Tyvek has all sorts of details. I want to go through just a couple of things just to show you the stuff that you could be looking for. If you walk up to a house and you know, all right, the frame of the house, there'll be cement board up here. It's going to be either probably brick down here. Could be adhered manufactured stone. Doesn't matter. If you walk up and you see this right here, does that bother you at all?
Yeah,
Why does it bother you?
not overlap.
No overlap. Yeah, so what's this actually doing right here? If water were to get in, be run down the Tyvek, is this really going to do you any good at this point? It's going to keep going. Now, it might be detailed properly at the bottom and no big deal. However, there's a couple things we usually see at this point. Get my clicker going. Oops, went a little too far. Usually what I see is they take that cement board and they seal up along this drip edge or the flashing there. And then what do you have? You have a flange then that comes up the back side of that siding. The flange of the drip edge or the flashing then could collect water and cause it to pool right there and it can't get out. So that's why, one, you shouldn't caulk that. Number two, Tyvek does provide a detail for how they want this done. You see right here, you got your flashing, could either be a Z flashing or an L flashing. Z flashing in this instance. They want tape going across the top, and you put your cement board above it. Whatever that siding is, usually cement board. The other option would be you could cut your house wrap, which no builder likes to do. Create a horizontal seam there. Then you got your Z flashing, you tape the top, lap your house wrap over top, tape it again. That's a possibility. Those are two ways you could detail it, and these of course are in the Tyvek installation guide. Now, is there a difference between these two types of tape right here? When I show this to the builders, there's usually one builder, maybe two in the class, that says, yes, there is. The rest are just kind of sitting there like, I don't know. There's a big, big difference between the two. One is seam tape for a house wrap. The other is an actual flashing tape called peel and stick. There's a whole bunch of names people use for it. But they're not to be used interchangeably. One's for one purpose, the other's for a very different purpose. One costs a lot more than the other does. A lot of times, whoever's installing doesn't have any idea between the difference, and they use this seam tape for everything. Here's where that'll get you in trouble. You got a hose bib sticking out through your house wrap right there. And they said, oh, we're gonna do a real good install. We're gonna seal up around that hole in the house wrap where that hose bib's come through. What did they use right there?
Seam tape.
Seam tape. Is seam tape gonna do any good right there? Is it actually gonna adhere when you start bending it or going at funny angles? No. Seam tape is only gonna adhere if it's perfectly straight line. That's the only time that's gonna adhere. The flashing tape is meant to be bent. It can go around, we'll see penetrations for utility lines, all sorts of things. And it has a much stronger bond. It's waterproof. It acts as a flashing. So very big difference. This is, the builders, their guys, their subs they're installing typically do not know the difference between the two. And usually I see a lot of seam tape used in places where it should not be used. If they're using seam tape around your windows, that's a problem. You're supposed to have flashing around your windows, not seam tape, okay? So we'll get into some of that in a second. I got some pictures, I think. So just know there's a big, big difference. Now here's a hot spot I see a lot with, when I'm doing frame inspections, looking at the house wrap, these gable returns, they never seem to be detailed right, like ever. I talk about a gable return, I'm talking about this little section that comes in like this. If you do a close-up on that, you see up here, that's what it looks like. Now, they usually just butt up some siding there and run it and leave it. Usually when I get up on a ladder and look at gable returns, I see bare OSB, almost always. So I usually get out of the ladder and look at every gable return because either there's bare OSB showing right where they just butted siding up here and didn't caulk it. There's certainly no house wrap back behind there because they didn't detail it right. The tops of the gable returns, usually they put shingles or a metal piece up on top of your gable return, but then they usually don't caulk it or flash it, and so you got bare OSB up there. I mean, all day long you'll find issues with that. Now, a little bit of water on top of this gable return, is that the end of the world? Is that water getting in the house? No. Might it rot out the little piece of decking or the OSB on the gable return eventually? Maybe. Not the end of the world, but if you can catch it ahead of time and save maintenance issues down the road, why not? Now here's how you would, from Tyvek, here's how they want this detailed. So back it up real quick. This isn't actually going through the wall, but say you had a porch and they have a joist coming out for the roof of your porch, right? And those come through the wall. Here's how you detail around that. This So that's where I picture this happening, at the front porch, or the front entrance, the roof over top of that. They want you to take, let me back it up one. They say, all right, butt your house wrap up on either side, tape it off. Then, this is your flashing tape, this is your seam tape. If you use your seam tape up here, it'll peel right back off and water get in around it. Yes, sir, in the back.
Could you back up your wood podium?
Oh, no, the podium, thanks. I'm blocking you, aren't I? Sorry about that. Not helping you out over there, am I? I'm standing in the wrong spot, Chris. You yell at me, man. You yell at me. All right, then you come back over top. You use the seam tape here. It's a flat application just going along the seam of the WRB, and it's okay. But see, we see stuff like this all the time, and you say, all right, that's not a big deal. What's the builder going to do? So come on, take a big old glob of silicone. Not the builder himself, but his guy. Big old glob of silicone is going on that. That's what happens. I mean, I get up on these final inspections, there's just, I don't know how many tubes of silicone they use, but there's silicone everywhere. Now you say, all right, well, that's okay, it'll seal up the siding. What's back behind that siding then? What's going on in the house rack? There's a big old hole in your house rack, right? Now this is a tiny little hole, but some holes are bigger than others. Working our way up. There's a bigger hole now in your house rack there because the utilities were installed after the siding was already on. That's what got in trouble here. So one of the things I talk about in the class of the builders, I say, guys, if you really want a watertight barrier on your house, on next to your house, you have to have your utilities installed before your siding goes on. And they go nuts with that. Oh, I never thought of that. And they're all writing out and just making notes themselves. I got this from a guy from Ashton Woods down here inside the city who's building these $1 million condos. He had the best details on his house wrap and siding of anybody I've ever seen. I mean, it was just, it blew my mind how good it was. I was like, man, you could take a fire hose to this house and you're not getting a drop of water going through that. And he said, yeah, my secret is I just always make sure utilities are completely installed before I let my siding guy on site. Well, that's simple enough, isn't it? So, yeah, at this point you can't go back and patch up your house wrap at all. You can put a big old glob of silicone around there maybe, but that's all you really can do. That's just what they did.
That's it.
And I just think that, all right, silicone's great, but it's going to dry out. When we come back and do these inspections at the 10-year mark when they're reselling the house, right? And you got all these open penetrations all around the house where the caulk had dried out after a couple years. Nobody maintained it. It's not like any homeowner is going to think about after, oh, every 5 years I need to go around and re-caulk up all the penetrations in my siding. No homeowner thinks that way. So if you can detail it properly at the time, why not do it? And we'll talk about some ways you can detail that cement board to be a whole lot better too.
John, what do you
Yep.
what do you say when you see that? I mean, you obviously at this point have a boilerplate type comment.
Yeah. If it's something like this, it depends on what type of siding it is, to be honest with you. With the cement board, thankfully, the manufacturers have a best practices guide, namely James Hardy, but the others have adopted some of the details in there. And so there are some ways you could go back and detail that much better without tearing off all the siding and trying to patch up your house wrap. I'm not going to make a huge deal on this, but there are some other instances where I will. I'm talking about just looking at from the aspect that there being an unsealed penetration in the house wrap.
Do you just make a reference comment the fact that a penetration does not appear to be properly or adequately sealed based upon the code or something related to the manufacture of the siding material? Or?
Yeah. So when it comes to just penetrations in the house wrap, they ran a conductor out for the floodlights by the garage and ran it straight through the wall, went to the side. I'm not going to make a big deal about that. If it's something bigger, say we get into, I think I got pictures in a minute, like a laundry vent or a bath fan vent, and they just punched a hole through everything and then put a bead of silicone around it. That's a bigger deal in my opinion because that's a much bigger opening for water to get in eventually than just your little 3/4 inch hole they drilled to run a conductor through. So, to be honest, if I wrote up, it's like how, yeah, I can make a general comment on every single house in North Atlanta right now, and I could write it up before I even stepped on site. This is wrong in every house in Atlanta. I mean, in North Atlanta, where I'm from. Every single one. Are they gonna go back and fix any of it? Nah, they don't. But yeah, I might make a comment in there if it's a larger penetration. I might make a comment say, hey, just to let you know, their house roof's not properly detailed to this location. Could be a potential entry port for water in the future. Recommend maintaining the caulk around this area to prevent water entry. That might be what I tell the buyer. See, this is what would be back behind that side, just a big old hole in the house right there. So he's talking about the bigger it gets, the more concerned I get. So I believe for a tankless water heater, I believe that's what that vent was for. They didn't even seal up around it. The final inspection, they got their CO. Not even sealed up around it. So water could certainly run in on that pipe and get into that wall cavity, follow the pipe in.
This kind of an issue, though, becomes a greater concern because the contractor's not going to probably install something like this until much further down the road. Siding material, finished material, all that goes in place. So part of the process, just like the cutting of the hole, you know that was done well after.
Well after, yeah. Yeah, so with an instance like this, what, for the sake of the video, you said raising concern about they're not going to be installing the vent on a water heater prior to their site. No builder's going to be doing that, and their timeline's just not going to work. So how would you avoid this and even have the ability to patch up the house wrap? There are ways you can detail around these penetrations, especially with cement board, that would allow you to properly flash the penetration. And we'll cover those in just a little bit when we get to the cement board section of the code. So this is from Tyvek's installation manual. It says seal the WRB around penetrations. So not just the siding, don't just put a big glob of silicone around where the penetration is. But actually seal the WRB around penetrations made to accommodate plumbing pipes, HVAC components, dryer vents, bathroom exhaust fans, exterior electrical outlets, exterior lights, gas lines. They try to throw everything in the kitchen sink underneath that to make sure it's all covered. So they're using Tyvek. It does say seal this up around all penetrations. Here's how they want you to seal a penetration. They have a detail for everything, I told you. So you poked a hole in it. They want you now to cut out a little strip to act as a head flap or a head flashing essentially over top that pipe. Now which type of tape are we going to use here? Flashing tape, not seam tape. Seam tape's not going to do the job. You do your flashing tape, you do the top half second, so you create a shingle fashion lap right there, and then you bring down and tape your two corners, your sides. That's their detail for how, if you really want a watertight seal around that pipe, how you do it. They do have another option here, a little bit different. You basically just wrap it around with flashing tape and then create a little head flashing over top of it. You can do it that way as well, a little bit easier. Talking about that builder fashion woods, this is what all his looked like. Every penetration had a custom flange there, and he had it taped up nicely, and it was just beautiful. I was like, man, I like this. Looking good. That was his hose bibs.
Wow.
I mean, I'm looking at that saying, man, that's good. This is what a lot of I see. You get that dryer vent or the exhaust fan vent. Hope that's not a dryer vent. And you look up there and it's just wide open. I mean, not sealed up. Wide open, big old hole around that bath fan vent or whatever it is. But this is what his looked like. His looked great. Man, that's good. Wow. All right, windows. We'll talk about windows at a couple different points here today. But I had Hank here was asking about windows earlier this week. We were texting back and forth about how do we seal up around windows. Anybody see anything concerning about this picture?
The WRB doesn't come on top of the head flash.
There you go. There you go. So pretty much any window manufacturer is going to tell you, don't tape up the WRB at the top of the window. They want that untaped. Now you can tape along the sides, obviously, with your flashing tape and the bottom, and the tape should go back behind the WRB along the top there. They want it to be shingle fashion. The reason for that is, a lot of times I see this flashing tape's put on when it's real cold. It doesn't stick too well. Even though it's not seam tape, it's supposed to stick a lot better than your seam tape, but when it's cold, they'll put it on, the next day it gets below freezing, it'll peel right back off. I have a bunch of houses that I did back in February, rolling around the whole exterior, and every piece of flashing tape had to be pulled off and redone, around every single window, every single door, everywhere on the house. Wasn't adhering. And so if this does not adhere, pulls away, what's going to happen? Water goes back in behind there. What if your WRB was on top of your flashing tape? And say this got a little bit loose, but the WRB is coming down top, well then you still got shingle fashion style, it's going to shed water still. So you're going to be all right. And of course you have the flange around the window to catch the water and divert it. Yes, sir, in the back.
A couple of questions that I'm looking at. The tieback, I don't know if that's correctly installed. It may have to flip over because I can't remember how the holes are kind of punched in it. You know, when it comes off that machine, it's got kind of perforation lines on it. So does it make a difference with DuPont tieback upside down?
Some of them do say,
I mean, there's a right way to put it up.
yeah, most of them will say this side out.
Yeah.
Big letters on it, like, don't put this side against the house, we want this side facing out. As far as orientation with lettering facing upward or downward,
It might not be.
I have not heard that, but like I said, their manual's pretty extensive, and I thought I read through most of it, but maybe there was something I missed, I'm not sure.
And the second one is on the windows. You have to really read the manufacturer because they may not require you to take the bottom.
That is
Some of
correct.
them- Some of them specifically say do not take the bottom. Like, we wouldn't know as inspectors unless you got the window package.
Yeah, so windows are tricky. The comment in the back was just some manufacturers will say the tape along the bottom of the window, some will say don't. Windows are tricky because different manufacturers will say the exact opposite of the other manufacturer in some instances. So, if possible, if they still have a sticker on them, I'll see what the manufacturer, who the manufacturer is, pull it up, try to see what they say in their instructions. Usually they're not very detailed, and they don't give me the answer to what I wanted to know in the first place. But that is true. Windows are a little bit tricky sometimes. Yes, sir, in the back.
And I would emphasize that because I went through it. You know, I think you ought to put sill pan flashing everywhere, 4 inches up the side of the base of the window and around. But the manufacturers, evidently, they're trying to play it both ways. So
Yeah.
they'll say, if you don't have to do it if you nail every hole in the flange or you put extra caulking. They're not definitive. They're not being prescriptive.
That's correct.
With the option.
That is correct. We'll talk about sill pan flashings when we get to brick here in just a little bit, because it is required underneath the code when we get to brick. So we'll talk about that. But yeah, some of the manufacturers will say you have to have a sill pan flashing. As any inspector, we would say, yeah, you definitely want to flash your sill. Why wouldn't you do that? But then some of the window manufacturers do seem to give a way out, saying you don't have to do that. So that is a little bit tricky. Yes.
My biggest questions come with vinyl windows. You know, what siding requirements, especially with the tiered masonry here. So are you going to be covering that?
Yes, we will. Looking at the time. We haven't even got to siding yet, so I got to speed this up a little bit. Here's just a typical detail of how, I think this is from Tyvek actually, how they want it detailed. But here they're showing how you would cut essentially a strip here to go over your head flashing for the window. You then wrap in the Tyvek around the sides and the sill. You might still install a sill flashing down here with your flashing tape. You'll see this a lot that comes at least 4 inches up, goes over that. There it is right there, sill flashing. So here's one. Doesn't really look like a pan flashing though, does it? I was going to say maybe they gave us some ammo, but it's not really a pan flashing still. Detail, just showing, making sure little things like you don't want this underneath this. Water get behind there. Head flashing, keep it back down. That's the typical detail. This complies with most of the window manufacturers, vinyl window manufacturers. That's pretty standard. What's wrong here?
Overlap.
On the corner.
Yeah, that corner doesn't look like a 6-inch overlap to me. So they need to fix that. Now, the question is, do they have 6 inches here or not? If not, then they need to start back here and go around the corner piece.
Tie back structure.
What's wrong here?
Flashing's over the house wrap.
Yeah, step flashing is over the house wrap. Now, if water's coming down this house wrap, would you want it to come on this side of your step flashing or that side of the step flashing? I think you'd want it on the outside. You want it on the roof side where it comes down. So you wouldn't want your house wrap behind the step flashing. You want this lapped over your step flashing so the water's coming down, hits the flashing, gets off your roof, not behind it. What's wrong here?
No windows.
No head.
So the detail we just looked at, and then maybe they just tacked it up so they didn't want to blow around in the wind. But eventually, whether this is if this is a window going here especially, even a door, your flashing needs to go back up behind it. This shouldn't be wrapped in there and stapled all down. Because remember, your head flashing needs to go up behind the house wrap. If you put your head flash on top of this and water starts coming down, you get water going in behind your door or your window.
If it's got staples in it, it's guaranteed they're not gonna be pulling it back down.
Yeah, if it's stapled down, I'm writing it up. Yeah, there's no doubt about that. What's wrong here? Ah, geez.
The box is set back too far.
There you go. Recess too far behind the exterior. And this is my favorite right here.
That's the cat right there.
Ah, geez. Oh, my goodness. Now, we do have some other types of WRBs besides our typical Tyvek-like house wraps. There are some materials used in Atlanta that act not just as your WRB, but they're also your structural bracing as well. They're your panels for your structural bracing. Zip system is one. This takes the place of your OSB and your house wrap all in one. And they have a pretty detailed installation guide. I don't see this very often, maybe once a year I run into it. But it is popular inside the perimeter more so than up where I'm at. I will say that. So just, you pull up the installation guide, just look through it on site on your phone while you're there. You're good to go. Another one that's a little more popular up where I'm at, because Fisher, when they moved down from Cincinnati about 5 years ago and entered the Atlanta market, brought this with them. And they do all their houses like this still. So they use this thermoply, which once again is your structural, takes place your OSB and also your WRB all in one. Now I'm not a big fan of this stuff because usually it's not installed right. This stuff is like less than 1/4 inch thick and it feels like cardboard.
Yeah, it does.
The termites love it.
The termites love it. I didn't know that. That's good to know as well. So there's a couple of reasons why I don't like it. It doesn't feel stable. Now it has ICC reports on it. It's been tested and approved by the ICC, so you can't say don't use this. They're allowed to use it. But you do want to know a couple things about the installation on it. On the structural RVs, you want to look at two things. Their joint treatment, how they treat their joints, and make sure there are overlaps in shingle fashion. So here's the thing. Here's what I don't like it. Your overlap requirement is how much? Whoa. How much was the vertical overlap requirement on a typical WRV? 6 inches. How much is it with them? You don't have to tape the vertical seams either. If you have your 3/4 inch overlap. If you do a butt joint on your vertical seams, then you have to tape it. So if there's no overlap there, just button it up, then you have to tape it. But if you don't want to tape it, just 3/4 inch overlap's fine. I'm thinking, what in the world? How'd they get this past the ICC report? My goodness. Now this all comes down then to the second thing you gotta look at, which is nailing pattern. Because it has a very specific nailing pattern. They will print on your little lines where every nail is supposed to go. And it is literally about every inch. About 100 nails going down through there. And they usually like to use staples. You can use staples or roof nails on there. Either one's fine. But they have to, if they're staples, they have to be horizontal. They can't be vertical. And you got to follow that nail pattern that's printed on there.
John, wouldn't that also leave a telegraph or a line as these things transition? Because even 3/4 of an inch is going to transfer at some point to the exterior. If you're dealing with siding materials, board siding and not masonry necessarily.
Yeah,
But
so
that's would create a,
yeah, so I said these are actually really, really thin. They're less than 1/4 inch thick. So you put two of them on top of each other. They're probably less than that even. But yeah, you put two of them on top.
but they're structurally accepted.
Oh, yeah.
They have the rigidity for shingles.
ICC report on. They have 3 different colors. They're for different applications, but all 3 of them have been run through the ICC board and they have ICC ES report on all of them. Yeah.
Somebody has that one.
Yeah. So just here's what I was talking about. Every one of these fastener going all the way up. They go around. There's a pattern for the in the middle of them as well across the span. So
I
you
see
see,
non-structural grade on that, but what is that?
this is the green. We don't have the green down here very much. We usually have the blue.
Yeah.
The blue is what I usually see, and that is structural. So they do have, the green is not structural. You shouldn't ever see that down here in Georgia, but I see the red and the blue down here. So you see, you got a fastener here, but then you see all these little lines, no fasteners.
Wow.
That's usually what I see a lot of. The other thing I see on this is they don't do it shingle style, so they have a piece coming up, and they'll put the piece behind it like this. Water go down in there. See a lot of that. Especially getting into some tricky details around architectural details on the back and stuff. Yes, sir.
When you nail it together on those lines, is it like kind of a sticky surface where they overlap, where it will bond itself over time?
No, it's
No.
just a visual.
It's just,
It's just a visual.
so when you lay it over 3/4, it doesn't stick to itself like shingles will with the heat. Nope.
Nope.
So that's like T-ply, or I call it T-ply, years ago, when we used to use something
Yeah.
similar to that.
Yeah, for the sake of the video, the question was, is there any adhering membrane at the joints that would seal, similar to maybe like a shingle would? And the answer is no, there's not. But it is an approved material, so if you run into it, just know, you can pull up the instructions, but the instructions, once again, are not detailed on this. They have basically 2 sentences. Or the little picture I showed you, those 2 little diagrams are all you get, and it says follow the nail pattern, and that's it. Not a lot of detail there. So you might run into this some. All right. Keep going before we do a break. How are y'all doing? All right, keep going. All right, so that was our 703.2. That was all our WRBs. Now we're going to 703.3, which is wood and hardboard. Not as much wood and hardboard being used, at least up where I'm at, anymore. You might have wood shingles, wood shakes on the front of a house, something like that. But not a lot of we're not using a lot of the cedar lap siding anymore. At least up where I'm at, I don't hardly ever see that. Stopped that back in the 80s and 90s. But there are a couple of codes here just to point out. If you're using panel siding, so this would be like for board and batten type stuff. They're actually using wood, not cement board, for their board and batten. Vertical joints should be over studs or OSB. Either one's fine. Those joints should be shiplapped or covered with a batten. Horizontal joints should be lapped 1 inch, shiplapped, or flashing should be installed over the batten and blocking. Now the reason I bring that up is we'll get into the cement board, but a lot of times there isn't flashing over top of those battens. And I'm talking about battens, we're talking about, let's see. Well, let's see. Technically these are battens, but see there's a horizontal joint there? I would say, all right, how'd they flash that joint? And we'll look at that when we get into cement board. If it's horizontal lap siding, so this would be just your boards running across, lapped over one over top as they go up. Lapped a minimum of 1 inch. End joints, this comes real important. I see this all the time with cement board. We'll talk about end joints and treatment of end joints and what's acceptable. But with wood or hardboard, you can caulk them, cover them with a batten, or put a strip of flashing back behind there. Like I said, don't see much of this anymore. Sometimes you go up to LJ, I might see some of it up there, they're going for a rustic look, but very rare to see this on a brand new house anymore. And hopefully we stopped using this stuff, right? My goodness. They still sell versions of this hardboard in Home Depot today. Now, supposedly they're improved versions, but they're still essentially a sawdust board. And exterior siding sawdust board is basically all it is. And you can go buy that fiberboard in Home Depot today. Why they're still selling it or why anyone's buying it, I don't know.
It's cheap.
It's $4 cheaper than a piece of hardy plank, I'll tell you that. That's probably the reason why. But so yeah, oh man, what a mess. Just out of curiosity, if you're, this is just my own information, if you're inspecting a house is 30 years old, has hardboard siding on it, been pretty well maintained though, so there might be one or two little spots with some minor damage. But overall, been fairly well painted. The bottom edges were actually painted up, so it wasn't swelling too bad. How big of an issue are you going to make for that for your client?
Not.
No? Okay.
Keep it caulked and painted.
All right.
That's what I said.
Just
Actually, it has better R value.
Better R value. That is true. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that's pretty much all I say. Say, hey, just to let you know that if this is exposed to water, it will fall apart, but it's been well maintained, so keep doing that. Basically what I'll tell them.
It was subject to a legal settlement.
Some parts, obviously LP, so some manufacturers,
this is not LP here.
yeah, this is not LP here for sure.
Masonite there.
Yeah, make good old Mason.
They were all subject to a legal settlement.
All of
Yeah,
them.
everyone?
I'm joking. Just it seems like it.
Okay. I knew there was more than one class action suit, but anyway, moving on. So that was our wooden hardboard. Now we're going to 703.4, next section. This is just a table. This whole section just gives you a table. There's a lot of good information in this table. We won't cover it in detail, but this table covers a couple different things. It goes through different types of your siding. It tells you what the nominal thickness is. It tells you how you should treat the joints. It tells you whether or not a water-resistant barrier is required back behind that siding. And it talks about types of support and fasteners. So can you use wood structural panels back behind it? Can you go to, we don't use fiberboard sheathing much anymore, so that's kind of not around here anymore. Can you go direct to your studs? How many fasteners? What's the spacing? All that. So this is a nice little table. Good to be aware of that. Covers every type of siding and it goes through all those. We won't cover this in depth right now, but it is a good table to be aware of. If you're wondering, man, did they put enough nails in this? Is that the right type of nails? All that sort of stuff. 703.5, we're moving on. Moving on to wood shakes and shingles. Do y'all do a lot of houses that might have some of these craftsman style details now? That have,
Some of the upper.
Let's come back, it's supposed to become more popular again.
yeah. Even a lot of the big track builders are trying to go for that craftsman style look, and they're not going all the way in, but they'll do a couple of details to try and go in that direction now. So that's where these wood shakes or shingles come in. Rarely see where a whole side of a house is just wood shakes or shingles, but they like to use it for some parts. What's wrong right here? Anybody know?
Vertically aligned joints.
It said vertically aligning joints. So where this is and where this is that a problem?
Yep.
Yeah, that is. The code addresses this. You got a code to back you up on this. All right, 703.5.1. The offset spacing between joints and adjacent courses shall be a minimum of 1.5 inches. I don't think I've ever seen it where they had all of them a minimum of 1.5. It's pretty rare. Maybe 2 or 3 houses ever, but 90% of the time they've got them joints just one right over top of the other, all over the place on the whole face of the wall. So this is something I write almost every single time when we're doing a house. Now, if it's a 10 or 15-year-old house, and I might make a quick note, but I'm not going to make a big deal about it. No signs of any water entry. But if it's a brand new house, you better bet I'm writing this up, and the builder's going to fix it.
Good luck.
Attachment. How do we attach these wood shakes or shingles? Well, you got to put stuff that's not going to rust. Is zinc coated stainless steel or aluminum nails. They need to be long enough to penetrate the sheathing, or if you're using furring strips, by ½ inch. So you think about it, that's got to be a little bit longer than your average roofing nail. It's got to be a pretty good sized nail to get through the shaker shingle and in ½ inch into the sheathing. Now, are we going to be able to see that? Probably not, but that's the code. The staples at least 16 gauge. They need to be 1 inch above the butt line. Butt line is where the previous shingle comes down on top of the one below it. Needs to be at least 1 inch above that. Don't have exposed staples is what they're saying. Should be able to see the staples. All right, what's wrong right here? It's hard to see. Bottom course of your wood shakes or shingles. This is your flashing over top of a door probably or something. It's a little bit hard to see, but you got the flange for your flashing coming up. Should you be able to see the top flange of your flashing? No. So we got a code right here. Water's going to go right behind your flashing. Flashing's doing no good. So we got a code for this though. It says the bottom course of your wood shakes or shingles shall be doubled. Was this doubled? No, they didn't double it. If they doubled it, then the second course behind this course would have come down and covered that and taken care of your issue. So even if they didn't have house wrap, it still would have been all right in one sense, in that the flashing wouldn't be exposed. But of course, they do need the house wrap back behind it as well. This is what I see all the time. Over top of garage doors or something like that, I look. First thing I'm going to do is get my little ladder out, get up here and start looking. And that was not me, that bent piece of flashing. Just so you know. Somebody else. I'm going to look, see, is this bottom course doubled? Because I'm not just worried about the bottom down here, I'm worried about the bottom course over the garage door. This should be doubled all along there, except the bottom course over top of your door. And you shouldn't be able to see the flames of the flashing coming up. But then I'm looking at this, I'm saying, all right, are all my joints offset properly? And I'm going to say, well, this isn't too bad. But if I look here long enough, I'll find a bunch where they're not offset.
Excuse me, by double, do you mean actually two? What exactly is that?
Yeah, you do 2 layers along the bottom.
Oh,
So it flares out.
so is it
Yep.
flare out?
You can do, it can. What a lot of builders will do, rather than doubling the wood, is they'll take a piece of hardy plank and run it along the bottom. Nice thin width on your hardy plank helps the shingles lay down flat without bumping them out at all, and that's acceptable. We'll do the same thing for you.
Run those hardy plank behind the shingles.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, it counts as a double layer then, and covers up your head flashing, so you'll be all right. That's what a lot of them will do, just for aesthetics, make it look better. Same thing here, just be looking, saying, all right, are my joints offset? It's a double course, is the bottom course double? All right. About all you need to know, I think, with the wood shakes and shingles. I mean, there's other stuff. We go into grading details and go really deep on any of this stuff. I mean, there's every type of siding has its own siding association, right? There's the MVMA for the Manufactured Veneer Association. They got their whole big long book of installation guidelines. And there's the Brick Association. They got a big long book of installation guidelines. Cement boards. I mean, everybody has their own association with their big long book of how the way stuff's supposed to be done. So you can go really deep on any type of siding. There's a lot out there if you want to get into all the weeds. But I think that's about all you need to know about the wood shakes and shingles. 10 more minutes and we'll take a break. You all good?
Yeah.
All right. So exterior plaster is what we call it in the code. Down here we call it stucco. Stucco. Now we got some guys in here that know probably a heck of a lot more about stucco than I do, because they work doing specialty stucco inspections, and they know a whole bunch about stucco. I'm just going to go over some of the stuff that's in the code, and I'm going to tell you some of it's never been done in Georgia. Ever. Oh man. A little umbrella code at the beginning of the stucco section says that the installation shall be in compliance with these 2 ASTM standards. There's a whole bunch of detail in those standards. And And most people don't have those standards, but you can get a lot of that information if you go to some of the stucco association sites. And Joe, I know you do them. Anything else you'd add about those standards?
I don't do stucco.
Oh, sorry.
Charles Charles is not here today.
We're missing our stucco guys, aren't we?
Mike did stuccos. Mike did stucco inspections.
Yeah, Mike, anything you'd add about, in general, about these standards?
No, I mean, you know, it's never installed correct. It never has been. So you really need to be familiar with these standards and some of the installation guidelines in order that you can correctly point out the deficiencies, even if it's on the home inspection and not if you're not doing moisture testing or anything like that. Because the details are obvious on these homes that it was never done correctly.
So he was just saying you need to be familiar with the details so you can point out the defects when you're doing inspections on them. And thankfully the code does cover a lot of the details. We'll cover what the code says here in just a second. Yes?
The only way you can even start to inspect that is if you were there at the beginning of the process, which we were very seldom, because all those standards start with is about how to apply the reinforcement wire, how you're supposed to mix the stucco, how much of the aggregate is supposed to be contained, and that's all happened. I mean, there's nothing we can do about any of that by the time we get there.
Yeah, he's just saying that a lot of the stuff that's done wrong is done at the very beginning of the process when we are not on site, and that is true. I am going to cover a little bit of that because some of that is in the code, so I'll cover it quickly because you're not going to be able to see it. But knowing how it's supposed to be done can help you diagnose problems that you see after the fact. That's why I think knowing how it's supposed to be done helps you out, even though you were not there the day it was being installed. So let's move kind of quick through this. We'll see if we can't get through this, and then we'll take our break. So, general requirements for stucco. Control joints must be installed. And this is, of course, what we normally refer to as hard coat stucco. There's a whole other section for the synthetic. Control joints must be installed to separate the stucco into areas of less than 144 square feet on walls.
Never happened.
So typically we look for horizontal control joints. If you got 2 stories based on the side of the house, it's 2 or maybe even 3 stories going up. Most of us, I think, have been in inspections a little while, know we should be looking for horizontal control joints at each level of the house. How many of us look for vertical control joints? Some of you have been doing it a while. You know to do that. I find a lot of inspectors don't ever look for any vertical. But technically, 144 square feet, that's 12 by 12. You can't have more than 12 by 12 section without vertical and horizontal control joints. Control joints cannot be more than 18 feet apart. So they say, well, we got a relatively narrow or relatively short section. It's less than 144 square feet. Still can't go more than 18 feet without a control joint. The metal lath is to be continuous at the control joints. I don't know if this has ever been done right. And tied to each side of the control joint accessory. Let me show you what we're talking about here. This is a control joint for hard coat stucco. It'd be installed either horizontally or vertically, nailed into the structural sheathing. And then, what's saying is the metal lath then that runs behind this, you're adhering all your stucco to, it should not run continuous behind this. It's got to be cut and then lapped on either side. The reason for that is, if you got a whole face where the lath has not been cut, the control joints aren't doing a lick of good. They can't expand and contract because there's no cut in your metal lath. So, I'll show you a picture here. Horizontal control joint, you see this? Metal lath comes up, it laps over some of the lath that was built onto the control joint and it stops. This does not connect to that up there. If it did, it wouldn't be able to flex. Control joint wouldn't do a lick of good. That would be doing a little bit of good, but it would not be fulfilling its intended function. That is in the code there. How many of you love to do these big old stucco houses? 12,000 square foot stucco house, all 4 sides. Man, oh man. Liability, that's what I see right there. Lots of liability. You can bet on these. My team doesn't do specialty stucco inspections. So you can bet we're recommending specialty stucco inspections on this house.
And that's an expensive inspection right there.
Oh, yeah.
That is a very expensive inspection.
Yes, it is. However, this was a very well detailed, I say very well, much better than average detailed house. You're looking for control joints, I mean, that's your control joints. They had them all over the place, so that was pretty good. They had them going all over. So that's pretty good. But yeah, oh man, I don't know how much someone would charge you, especially stucco inspection on that. All right, when you don't do your control joints right, and you don't leave joints in your lath around the control joints, then you get cracking. There's all sorts of reasons it causes, but one of the main reasons is if you don't follow those details, you get cracks, all sorts of cracks. When it comes to that metal wire lath, there's a couple things that say, hey, 11 gauge or nails or 16 gauge staples. Here's the thing, space no more than 6 inches on center along framing members. So every 6 inches, they want that lath fastened all over the place. Don't want it becoming loose once you put all that weight on it. 3 coats, pretty straightforward. Use 3 coats of plaster. Don't do 2 coats.
And they're different.
They're different.
They're different. They're not all just screed.
See, I'm not sure if the code gets into the difference on it, but you're correct on that for sure. All right, here's a good one. On wood frame construction with an on-grade floor slab system, exterior plaster shall be applied to cover, but not extend below the lath, the paper, and the screed. There's a couple things right here going on. One, there's assuming there's going to be a weep screed at the bottom.
There you go.
That's a big assumption in Atlanta. I don't see very many weep screeds at the bottom of hard coat stucco. But it says there should be one. Now that's pretty big. Now basically all this is saying is that stucco shouldn't be going down into the dirt. That's what this is, your code for that. So we write that up on a lot of 20-year-old houses, right? Well, here's where it actually is in the code. See this all day long, stucco just going right down the dirt.
They treat it like brick.
They do treat it like brick, and it's very, very different from brick. Brick has weep holes so that the water can get out, and it's got flashing at the bottom to direct the water, theoretically, flashing at the bottom to direct the water out of those weep holes. This should be up above grade, and we got a code here. It says how much. The weep screed shall be placed, weep screed's at the bottom of the stucco. Weep screed shall be placed a minimum of 4 inches above the earth, or 2 inches above paved areas.
Where did you get the stone?
Yeah. Same thing with stone. So remember, that adhered stone is just lumpy stucco. So we're going to see there's a code that says the same thing.
You can't go back and repair that either, can you? I mean, you gotta have a weatherproof right coming over the last year, the week.
You can always
Yeah.
repair it, just how much money it costs to do it.
I mean, the worst case scenario is you got to cut up past the bottom of the foundation wall and go up high enough to put your weep screed, properly detail the weep screed. Then you got to redo that whole section of stucco and then paint the whole thing to match. It's gonna be involved. Yep. Here's a little detail what it looks like. If you don't know what a weep screed is, this is your weep screed. This picture is not in the code. This is from Code Check. Got one of those little Code Check books. I think that's where that's from. So this weep screed is required in the code. There is not a picture of it in there. But this just shows how your typical detail. There's your house wrap. Usually they use a tar paper or doubled house wrap. Your lath, which we don't see chicken wire now. We usually see like a good heavier gauge lath. 3 coats of stucco, scratch, brown, and finish. And then it's all over top of your weep screed, which is 4 inches above ground, except in Atlanta where we run into the dirt for the termites to get behind.
John, I think that's in the commentary.
This is in the commentary?
It may be in the commentary, I don't know.
I will see. Actually, I'll look it up in the break. It is.
Can I ask a question? What
Yes.
do you guys write for that? 'Cause it's not just North Atlanta. I mean, I'm in
It's
Noonan.
everywhere.
All that stuff,
Yeah.
buried right down into the dirt. And I
Yeah.
don't see weed screed anywhere.
Yeah, you will not see it. Anyone want to give their narrative on that? Because I know we all write it up.
We have to.
Well, it depends upon, I mean, you're not seeing much of this type of application today on new construction.
Yeah, we don't see a lot of stuff on new
You're
construction.
you're looking at older construction. so,
1990s.
You know, in the 90s and certainly, you know, even in the early 2000s, you see a fair amount of. You just basically comment the fact that the application standard does not conform to what the IC, or the IRC in this particular instance, the IRC specification for base finished elements on the exterior. It's not permitted to go within grade, and you give the obvious explanation as to why, both from the water issues as well as insect issues. I mean, and it basically even in EAFs, you're looking at similar issues. I mean, EAFs basically said that it didn't terminate in grade, of which they all did. But you know, you create some basic verbiage that kind of just encapsulates the whole thing. Let them know that what's there is not acceptable and that it should be evaluated, addressed by a qualified contractor. And that's the most you can do. I mean, you're not there to tell them how to correct it.
Yeah, Mike, what do you say, Mike?
Well, what I do on that is, I have that adhered manufacturer stone guide that you showed earlier in my report, and whether it's stone, stucco, they have those details. I will reference that manual and that particular detail, and just so that they'll understand the way it should be installed and it's not installed to those details. And then I just, you know, recommend that they might want to have a stucco evaluation done on it.
Yeah.
Make sure there's not any moisture issues.
Yeah.
But
By and large,
referring back to those diagrams into
Yeah.
your report helps a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll let the client know, hey, you're not gonna find a house 20 years old in Atlanta that was actually done right, it doesn't exist. That being said, here's why this should have been done this way. Provides a hidden path for insects, could prevent water from draining properly. Recommend advanced stucco evaluation, something like that. Yep.
On stuff like that, there's a lot of variations on how that's put up. There's everything from polymer modified to CPS backing.
EPS, yeah.
You really need to ID if there's insulation findings, because sometimes these workload systems will have EPS.
He was just making the comment that there are variations. There's not two types of stucco in Atlanta. There's probably 13 or 14. Variations on the hard coat and the synthetic. There are hybrids with 3 coats of 3 layers of hard coat over top of wire lap with 1-inch insulation back behind it. Foam board back behind it. Well, what is that? Well, it's a hybrid. It's got the insulating board and your traditional hard coat, both on the same one. So yeah, this gets a little tricky. Yeah, it's hard to identify sometimes. I will tell you this, if you want an easy tool, I don't know if I should do this on tape. I'll do it on tape. We want to welcome inspectors here this morning from other inspector organizations, and so along that vein, Nachi has a card with an ID and stucco card. It gives you like a little tree diagram. It says start here, and says, is this true, yes or no? Stuff you can see. If it's no, you go over here. Is this true, yes or no? Yes or no, go down here. A little tree diagram, help you identify any type of stucco on site. Buy it for like $15 off their website. It's a nice tool to have, because sometimes it gets crazy. I think I know a lot about stucco, and sometimes I show up and I'm like, geez, what's going on here? So, nice little tool there. So, WRB performance equivalent of 2 layers grade D paper. If you somehow are there while they're installing that stucco and there's just 1 layer house wrap, regular old house wrap back behind it, Here's a good one. Each coat should be kept in moist condition for 48 hours. Second coat shouldn't be applied sooner than 48 hours. Third coat shouldn't be more than 7 days after that second coat goes on. Oh my goodness. They'll do all 3 coats in the same day down here. So, anyway, that's all we'll cover stuff right now. Let's take a break. 15-minute break maybe, and we'll come back and we'll cover brick. We'll cover cement board. We'll cover adhered stone. We'll cover all that good stuff. All right, well, we'll keep rolling on through here. We've got a good little bit of the chapter 7 to go through still. We're getting into stuff now that's more common, at least on the new houses I'm inspecting. Your brick veneer, your stone veneers, your cement board, all that's typically what I'm seeing. I'm not seeing, guys were asking me a bit ago, they've seen a lot of stucco on the new homes, and no, I'm not. Occasionally, maybe once or twice a year, a real high-end home down inside the perimeter or something like that, but by and large, the builders aren't touching it. Probably because folks got scared about it and they don't think they could sell a house if it was stucco, but the tract builders definitely aren't touching it, that's for sure. So mainly, what I see, at least with all the tract builders, is definitely the brick veneers, the cement board, occasionally a little bit of wood shakes on the side for a nice little detail, and then your geared stone. So, thankfully the code has some really good stuff about brick veneer. Some of it we can see and some of it we can't, but we'll cover it. So another just general section at the beginning here. Here's one part of that general section you may or may not be aware of. It tells us that the max height for a brick veneer in our seismic zone, which is category B, is 30 feet. Now, most of the time, you're not going to run into a brick veneer wall over 30 feet tall on residential. It's pretty tall. Where you're going to run into it is on the side of a 3-story house, real expensive house. Decided to do 4-sided brick. Paid a lot of money for that. Big old house. And so you go up 3 stories, basement stories, your main and your upstairs, and then you got a gable in it. And it keeps on going. So you're up well past 30 at that point. It can be engineered, so if they have an engineer that signed off on it, then they're all right. But if I am inspecting a brand new house and it's got over 30 feet tall brick, I just say, hey, code limits brick veneer 30 feet tall. Recommend confirm with the builder they have an engineer letter on this, or engineer design, or something like that. So that's in there. How about support for brick? Now this is real important because just about every house that seemed like built in the 90s with brick veneer was not well supported. They didn't support the brick right. They didn't size the lintels properly. And man, there's neighborhoods in Kennesaw and Ackworth where every house in the whole neighborhood has bad cracks around the garage doors and going up all over the place. Windows sometimes. The bricks just cracking all the pieces, and it's because they didn't support it right. So a couple things it talks about. The lintels that we use to support the brick should be, this is over top your doors, your windows, should be anchored to studs, 16 on center with lag screws. So not just a nail going through there, got to be actually held on with some hardware that can hold some weight. Max height of 12 foot 8 inches above a lintel. Now you can engineer around this again, but generally you can't go up 3 stories above a lintel, all right? That's just way too much weight, and the lintel's never going to be rated for that. And then your flashing weep holes are in accordance with 703, 721. We'll get into flashing weep holes because that's something we can readily see. We'll talk about that at length in a minute. That's something we can readily see on every house, but certainly if we're doing a final inspection on a new house, that's something we want to be looking at. So this is in, let's see, this is essentially the diagram that's in the code there. And it gives a little detail about support. So this is support with a steel angle. Here's your lintel. Coming down, you see it's got the lags going into the stud. That's good. Then it gives some flashing details here, which are nice. These are in the code. This isn't just somebody making up this diagram. This diagram's in the code. It shows how our WRB is going to come. Here's your flashing going down through a lower course on the brick. Then counter flashing coming down. Step flashing or base flashing coming up. All that's detailed in the codes. That's nice to have. But that's how it would be supported on a steel angle. Now we also can support it on the roof structure, I guess we could say, but you're basically supporting it on your joists. Now, if you do this, you got to use, or your rafters, sorry, minimum of 3 2x6s. Now, when I'm doing frame inspection, I know they're going to be putting a brick, like you rarely ever see this, all right? They don't do this. But this is what it says. If you got it coming down, say, over top of the garage, and that brick's going to be coming down top of your garage gable, and they're going to be resting that brick down on top of the garage roof, essentially, you can either use steel lintel that has step downs in it to support the brick. That steel lintel can be screwed into your studs with lag bolts, or they could support the brick on the rafters. But the rafters at that location have to be minimum 2x6s, could be bigger than 2x6. And then also it says 3 lag screws at every stud.
Wow.
Now, once again, this probably never happened in Georgia, but that's what it says. Now, I'm going to tell you this, they triple up the rafters, you might not be able to see the lags, because usually they just lag the first one, run the lag through that, and then nail the other 2 on. But we could pick at them and say, well, your lag should go through all 3, maybe, I don't know, but it's just hard to tell if they actually use lags a lot of times. This is going to be used on a maximum of a 7/12 slope. If you're gonna go bigger than that, you got, like I said, you got those stops. If the angle is more than the 7/12 pitch on your roof, they're gonna weld in little horizontal stops on the lintel all the way down to support the brick, so the brick doesn't slide down the lintel. You got a real heavy brick facade, slide down the lintel over time, cause cracking. I'll show you a picture in just a second. Max height over top of your lintel, once again 12'8". So here we go. 3 rafters, minimum 2x6, 3 lags, every stud. Strip up your rafters there. It's on a steep slope. What they're going to do is on this lintel right here, they're going to weld in little stops like this, and the brick's going to come down top of it. If it's just your straight angle, typical lintel, it's just going to be going like this, right? Your brick weight come down. Whether it ever do that, probably not, but that's why it's in the code. Over 7/12 slope, it's supposed to be like that. Then they got a whole section here just on lintels, a little bit more. Minimum bearing of the lintel. Saw this a lot back in the 90s. They'd have about 1.5 inches of bearing. So your lintel will go across the window, and then on either side, if it's bearing there, you've got just a little bit of barely catching the brick on either side of your window. And that's supposed to be minimum 4 inches lapped over the brick on either side of the door or window. And it's supposed to be protected from rust. My goodness, thankful that they put this in the code finally. Because every house from the 90s, your lintel looks like that, right? Oh man. You get up and start looking over top of your door or window, and this lintel will just be all rusted to pieces. And then as these lintels rust, they expand, and then that's why you got the joint in the brick cracked right there. It's because the rust expanded it over time. So now, thankfully, you don't ever see them when they're not corrosion proofed anymore, but I'm just glad they specified that. So we don't have to deal with this nonsense anymore. Max span of the lintel. Now we ran into a lot of problems because they're trying to run undersized lintels across spaces that were just too big. And you put a lot of weight out in the middle of steel lintel, top of a double garage door, that's a recipe for problems right there. So we got this table in the code. Talks about size of your lintel. Talks about whether there's a story above, 1 story, or 2 stories above. There's 2 stories above, shouldn't go more than 18 feet tall. And then talks about reinforcing bars you can use to reinforce the lintel. What's your average width of a double garage door?
16.
That's a small one, 18 feet.
So let's say 16 to 18. In this table, it doesn't matter. You're over top this category. You got to drop down to this category for any double garage door. So what's it say you got to have? Double. You got to double up the lintel.
Wow. You never see that.
Never see it.
No story.
Yeah.
Is that supposed to be a clear span of 18 feet for the lintel?
My understanding was yes.
So you're
Now,
not anchoring the vertical flange to the header beam.
you got a good question there. I think that's even with anchoring it. Because you think about it, even when you're anchoring it, you're still going to get some flex, unless I'm wrong. I could be wrong on this, and I'll be more than happy to hear you out on it. I think even when you're anchoring it to your header, you're still going to get flex on essentially the weight-bearing part, the angle I could be wrong on that, but let me know. Let me know.
How do you do that? How do you put two lintels in there?
Right?
They don't, they just put a taller lid.
Just put one.
One that's taller.
Yeah, you can essentially, I mean, I saw a picture of it one time, never seen it in real life. They don't do it. But I've seen a picture of it one time, they essentially bolted them on top of each other.
So they stack them right on top of each other.
Yeah, that's what the picture I saw.
Well, that's good. You know, you're coming out and up with that second lintel.
Yeah, yeah.
So you have, that's no story above. How many layers of brick is that?
Couldn't be too much, could it?
Depends whether there's a gable there.
Yeah.
Or if it's a hip roof.
Yeah, it's a hip. Let's look at a picture here in a second. Now here's the way out. The note C underneath that little table right there does say, other steel members meeting structural design requirements may be used. So you can have some sort of lintel that's been engineered. The engineer approved it, did their calcs on it, and they're okay. Fine.
It would, I guess it then depends upon, I would imagine that they probably are gauged by the thickness of the steel angle
Correct.
itself, so that's also a very.
Nobody does.
She's a bigger piece of steel.
You use a bigger one.
Does anybody make it with a taller web? Usually in steel girders and anything, your strength comes from the height of the web.
Yeah.
Right.
And I wonder if they go beyond that 6-inch web.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's probably the case there. I mean, I've seen some really big lintels before that were well above what's on that table, and I'm sure they were engineered lintels to fit the stand, and then they were okay. So I've definitely seen them a lot bigger than just a 6-inch, no doubt. That's why in the brick veneer, it's nice to see this, right? You don't have to worry about that as much. You're like, all right, we're not overloading those lintels. We don't have to worry about that problem. That's good. What about this right here?
That's like a 16-inch.
So what was that again?
There'd be a crack at the keystone.
Crack at the keystone. Is there a lintel here?
Yeah.
I would expect it.
I see this frequently.
Yeah.
All right, so you said you've seen it frequently. Talk to us a little bit about it.
The lintel's usually higher up, right? And they put that wooden piece below the lintel.
Okay. And arch with the keystone supposed to hold up the course or two below the lintel? Is that the thought? That's their plan?
Well, it's a decorative aspect because that arch of wood is part of what's supporting the arch of the brick, the soldiers that are standing.
Yeah. I look at that and I just say, if I might not be able to come up with a code 100%, they do actually have a lintel that's properly sized, I might not be able to come up with a code with saying that's not right, but I see problems. Namely, when you get up and you see that right above the keystone.
Well, it says that the lintel has to be a non-combustible material.
Yeah, so we gotta say, is there anything in the code that says you can use any old piece of wood for a lintel?
It doesn't have the lintel doesn't necessarily a piece of steel.
Yeah, but I would go back to, if it was me, I'd go back to those diagrams and say, here we have these diagrams that show how a lintel's supposed to be installed, supposed to be bolted, yada yada, all this stuff. This is an exception to what's normative in the code. You have an engineer letter or something that says it's all right. I mean,
Well, in this particular situation, you're looking at this, number one, the likelihood the interior has been drywalled, so it's finished out, there's nothing visible to the inside. Externally, you're basically looking at finished grade. All you can comment on is the crack.
Yeah.
And you don't know what's there.
because your lintel can be covered up with mortar.
Exactly.
If it was done 2 courses or 1 course above the keystone or whatever.
I bet all the windows were the same too, weren't they, on that house? They put the
Yep.
arches all the way across.
Yep, it's the exact same thing on all the windows.
I can't hear it. Can you repeat some of this?
Oh, yeah, sorry. So he was just saying that, from the back, saying that if you were inspecting this house as a final inspection or even a 5-year-old house, there's a lot we can't see. We can't see if or where the lintel is. If it is indeed a course or 2 above that keystone at the top of the arch, could be covered up with mortar. We don't know. I'll tell you, it wasn't flashed or leaked right. I'll tell you that right now. We can see that, but we'll get to that part in a second. So we could comment on that. We could comment on whether or not there was any cracking present, which in this case there certainly was. But beyond that, there's a lot we don't know. And so we can't report on what we can't see a lot of times. So that's a very good point. Yeah. That just makes me uneasy. I like to see an arch. If I use an arch to support anything, I want it to be a true arch, not whatever that is. That's not really an arch. And I don't trust wherever that piece of wood underneath is either. But we're limited a little bit on what we can and cannot report on.
Well, there's definitely something moved.
Yeah, something dropped. All right, when you're putting up the brick veneer, it needs to be anchored. How many of you have had a brick veneer wall, you've been to walk up and push and the whole thing moved? Anybody? Yeah, everybody, just about everybody in the room. Yeah, we've all had a couple of those. Especially on an older house. If it's brick veneer, I'm going to always walk up and do a little push. Just not trying to push the house down, but I'm just going to feel the wall a little bit. Because a lot of times they didn't put any brick ties in. They did not anchor the brick to the studs or to the sheeting. So here's how often if you're doing new construction. Once again, typically on a framing, we're there maybe before the siding, and our framing inspections don't usually include siding. Final inspection, siding's done. Where this comes into play is if I'm there doing the framing inspection, a lot of times they're starting on the siding. So I'll stand there for 5 or 10 minutes and watch them. And I'll go over and tell the guy, buddy, no moss. Time out. And I'll either get a supervisor, I'll use my Spanglish and talk with them and say, hey, we got to switch some stuff here. I don't have a problem doing that. Because I don't want it to get covered up and then not have anything in the builder's not going to rip the siding back off, the brick back off after it's been done wrong. I had a house a little while back I was done a frame inspection. Had a lot of problems on that one. They had put all the floor joists in wrong, taken them all back out, reinstalled them, but in doing so they damaged the flange on every eye joist and unfinished basement. You can see it. So then they had to come in and cistern new joists besides every single joist in the entire basement because they're all damaged. So that sort of stuff was going on. They had roof trusses that were full span roof trusses that were floating because their partition walls were too high. That sort of stuff on this house. So I'm standing there with the builder who had gotten a call from his boss to come out there. And we're sitting there talking about some of the framing issues, and the guys are starting to put the brick up on the front of the house while we're standing there. And I'm looking at them, and I'm looking at him, back and forth, because as they're putting it up, the house wrap back behind that brick has wide open gaps in it. Their joints, it's not even overlapped, the joints wide open. Holes, wide opens all the place. They're starting to brick up right over top of it. So I'm looking at them, looking at him, he's watching his guys, I'm watching his guys. I said, you gonna stop them or what? he's like, what? What's going on? Buddy, look at your house wrap. Oh yeah, he runs over there. No, guys. I mean, that's the type of stuff that gets covered up every day on job sites all around Atlanta. And if I can help my client by saying, hey guys, time out. Let's address some of this during the framing inspection, I definitely will. But this just tells you where your brick ties are supposed to be. No more than 32 inches on center horizontal, no more than 24 inches on center vertical, and no more than 12 inches away from a door or window opening. Yes, sir, in the back.
Just on process, how are they going to find a stud? If you got a house wrap up and in, how are they going to find a stud when they put the anchor in? I'm assuming one nail through the siding is okay.
Yeah, they usually don't. They usually anchor in this OSB. Now, I'm not saying they should. I'm just saying it's usually what's happening.
But they don't look for a stud to anchor.
They may or may not. I mean, probably not.
Usually they're putting them in as they're laying the brick going up, so I don't know how they know they're 24 inches above, or, I mean,
yeah.
You know, the ties are not put in as one.
Yeah, so the comment from the back was usually the ties aren't pre-installed before the brick goes up. Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. It's nice if they are. Let's go the opposite way. I got a picture of ties. But here's nice. Ties are all in. Those of you who don't know, these are the brick ties we're talking about. They'll be bent out, put in between the course of the mortar. So that doesn't look too bad. They got a nice grid pattern going up there.
They take the time to figure it out.
Yeah, yeah. That doesn't look too bad. But to your point, Mike, you're right. Sometimes these will not, most of the time probably, these are not pre-installed. So like I said, I just like to watch them. I'll take 5 minutes and just watch them, see what they're doing. And if I see a pattern where they're doing everything wrong, I'll say, hey guys, can we have a conversation? I can't force them to do anything. I'm not their boss. But usually they're pretty open to listening to me if I just am polite, not a jerk about it. Yeah. This is just for our information to know how many are supposed to be there, not to be able to see it most of the time. Here's where we get fun stuff here. Flashing on brick veneer. Now we got a flashing section coming up underneath siding. It's a whole section just to flashing. But brick has its own flashing section underneath the brick section. So we want to have flashing at the first course of masonry above finished ground level. Now is this going to be metal flashing? Nah. It's going to be a black rubber membrane usually. It's coming out in between the courses of the mortar. That's usually what it's going to be. Not going to be metal going through your brick. It's supposed to be above foundation walls, above lintels, at shelf angles. Now just to be clear, I believe, unless I'm wrong, the code says it can be above the first course above grade or above the foundation wall. I think that's what it says, but I'll double check in a minute. Above lintels, above shelf angles, and at wall roof intersections. That's where we want flashing with our brick. At heads and sills of windows and doors. I think that's it. Yep. All right. So just my point here real quick as well. We're talking about brick mainly, but this also goes for real stone. I'm not talking about this lumpy stucco, the cultured manufactured stone. I'm talking about real stone that has weight. The code lumps those in together with the brick. It says, hey, the provisions apply to both these together. Now, how many of you see weed poles when it's real stone?
I've heard it. I have never. What's that?
Maybe once.
Once you write it up, it's already too late anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, you gotta write it up.
Yeah, that's the builder's issue at that point in time. That's not mine. If there's ever any issue, I have a report showing I caught it. Let the builder's warranty department deal with it at that point. But so here's kind of what we're looking at. Brick veneer, house wrap, or it's going to might not be just a regular house wrap, but a heavier duty, usually like a felt paper coming down. Then this is usually a rubber membrane acting as your flashing. It comes out. And I say comes out, doesn't usually come out, because if over top all those locations we just looked at, they had black rubber sticking out of their brick, the buyer would never buy the house. It would look ugly. So the buyer's not going to like that. But so usually they don't bring it all the way to the surface of the brick. But that's theoretically where it should be, above grade, first course of masonry above grade, and all the other locations we just talked about. So here's just this is a typical brick veneer house that I would be doing a new construction inspection on. I do a ton with the trap builders up in my way. So this would be typical. Now where would I want to see flashing? And like I said, I can't see it. Where would I hope that there's flashing on this house? Through the brick.
Everywhere. Under the end of the windows to start with will be the first place that I'll look.
We'll start down
Well,
low.
you can start down from the
First course above grade, right? So there should be flashing all along here.
You're not going to see that one. Under the one.
Head flashings above windows. All supposed to be flashed. Now this isn't going to be metal flashing once again. You're going to have your lintels. There should be rubber coming down over that lintel. Or maybe the first course above the lintel, but preferably right by the lintel. So head flashings. So all those. Then some sort of flashing here. Now here on this house, I believe they bricked through. So in other words, the brick did not stop and it was not resting on the rafters for this roof section. The brick wall just came right down. They just pretty much stuck a roof section on. That's typically what they're going to do. So right there, you're going to have, of course, like your counter flashing, your step flashing, but you're not going to have a membrane, rubber membrane, coming through to the surface of the brick right there, because it's just going to come down and hit the head of the door below, and that's okay. Right here, though, this is interesting. This is probably never done right. This usually does not go through. In other words, the brick does not usually run behind the fascia or the eaves right there, usually stops and then comes out, and then they rest this little section just on your roof decking. That's usually what they do. So technically that should have the rubber membrane flashing back behind it. Then it says all your sills have got to be flashed. So you got sill flashing on all your windows. All right? That's quite a bit of flashing there. A lot of flashing. Required by code.
John, go back briefly to that picture, and you're talking about the little cover over the entry area and the roof line there.
Yes.
You're not implying that you may not see flashing at all there?
No, sorry, thanks for the clarification. Joe was asking, am I implying that we would not see any flashing right here over the little roof section? No, certainly we want to see some flashing there. And there's basically 3 different types of flashing that could be going on here. One, there's the actual flashing that starts behind the brick, goes through the mortar, and you have a weep hole right above it to drain the water when it hits that flashing. We're going to talk about the weeps in just a second. This all makes sense. That's completely different from the flashing that's applied to the exterior of the brick.
All right, okay.
Which would be your step or counter flashing.
Right. Since you were commenting about those
Correct.
particular intersection areas, I just want to clarify.
Yeah, you definitely want to see some flashing there, or you're going to have water going in at your roof-to-wall intersection, it'll rot out your framing back behind there. I've got some pictures. They're coming up, they're going to be good. The weep holes should be located 33 inches on center and located immediately above all flashing. So we just saw all the places where there should be flashing. Now there should be weep holes above every location where we just saw the flashing should be. So, I mean, these are all the places I'm looking for weep holes.
Where's the sections required to be plugged with mortar?
So this I would leave off probably if it's, the brick's going all the way through. You don't need to worry about those two. But bring back the ones on the bottoms. So that's with the exception of these here, because I said the brick's going down through, so you don't need to worry about that. All the red arrows are where you hope to see a weep hole, approximately. How many houses do you think actually have all these on there? Not too many. Not too many. That's what the code says, though. Weep holes above all the flashing.
One of the things that I'm sure everyone has probably seen, especially along with the front, the lower front windows and the tubes that you would see below the window, and then at the foundation line, they'll sometimes eliminate those along the bottom of the window and just use what's below the foundation line as a substitute or in addition to, as opposed to doubling above.
Yeah, so Joe is saying sometimes they might leave these guys off below the window, still flashing, and just use them down there. I see that as an issue personally because you're supposed to have a sill flashing there.
Yeah, the problem comes about is that, you know, sometimes you're able to see the flashing because even if it sticks out and through the mortar joint, they'll come back and cut it back. And
they don't want it hanging out.
They'll, you know, at least trim it back to where it's not so obvious.
Yeah. The reality is I can't tell if the flashing is there at all these locations. I can tell if the weep holes are there, though, on every house I ever inspect. Now, on a 30-year-old house, am I going to write all this up? No. Were weep holes required 30 years ago? Yes. But was it specified to all these locations? No, it wasn't. So if I'm doing a 30-year-old house and there are no weep holes, I might make a general comment. Just say, hey, no weep holes reviewed. This could potentially prevent water from draining out from behind the brick, but it's common to see on older houses. The absence of these is common to see on older houses, yada yada, something like that. Just let them know, hey, couldn't see them, but I don't see any problems either. But on a new house, I can check every one of these locations and see if it's there or not. That's easy. Yes, sir.
What about the front door, above the front door?
Oh, sorry, did I not click enough? Oh man, I left off my front door ones. Good catch. Boom, boom, right there, 100%. These need to drop down to there. That's where I messed up. Good catch, man. Thanks. Yep. So this is, like I said, this is something every inspector can be looking for, and Easy to tell, required by code.
Excuse me,
Yes.
what good are they if they're filled with grout or Georgia mud?
Oh, like this? What's this right here? I've done a couple of houses where you guys get these. You pull up to the driveway and the homeowner meets you in the driveway. And man, they're so proud of this house. Usually maybe a little bit older retired guy. You ain't gonna find nothing on this house. And of course, any inspector takes that as a challenge. It's like, hold my beer, watch this. But I think this was on one of those. And this guy was so proud of his house, perfectly maintained house. And so, of course, he's starting to try and follow me around during the inspection. And we have to have a little heart-to-heart at that point, explaining, hey, sir, I got to do my thing and you got to go watch Fox News. But in the process there, as I'm starting to walk around, he's like, yeah, I haven't sealed up all the holes where the bugs come in. Sir, that's not what those were.
John, another typical issue that I think we find, whether it's on new construction, I find it a fair amount, as well as houses that have had some age to them, is that when they come back and do their backfill, the guy has no clue that he's covering up around the foundation level weed street holes.
Yeah, good point, Joe.
They're all below grade, and I tell clients the obvious. It then does the exact opposite of what it's intended.
Yeah, good point. So Joe is just saying that a lot of times the guy who's doing the final grade around the house, this is long after the siding's done, that guy in that Bobcat does not know code. He's a Bobcat driver. He might be a very good Bobcat driver, but he doesn't think about weed poles. I guarantee that. So he's just trying to make the dirt look pretty around the house. That's his entire job. So he's going around slinging around that dirt with the Bobcat, and a lot of times he'll backfill right over your weed poles. Then you can allow water into the brick, back behind the brick, because it's now below grade. So the code says first course above grade. If there's weed poles and they're covered with dirt, it's not the first course, no longer the first course above grade. And I just write up and say, weed poles were not viewed at first course above grade at this location. Yes, in the back.
You're saying that the weed poles need to be in the first course above grade. Suppose you have a masonry wall that extends up a foot, 2 foot, 3 foot above grade. Shouldn't the weed poles be just below the wood framing?
Yeah, so that's where the code about foundation walls comes in. If, depending on, I'm thinking of a number of different scenarios here. We get scenarios where you transition from your studs and your sill plate, your wood framing, onto a foundation wall, and the brick keeps going around the back side of the house, or the side of the house. So then you still need weed poles at the first course above grade if the foundation wall is 5, 6, 7, 8 feet above grade.
Exactly.
That's your question?
Yes.
Okay. From my understanding, one, it says above foundation walls. I don't want to tell you wrong here. Sorry, I knew this about 2 months ago. Someone got a code book. Look that up. See, it says or and. I'm wondering, is it?
We don't have a code book here.
Online.
All right, I don't want to take time in the video. We'll circle back around at the end, and I'll make a little comment because I don't want to take time in the video to look it up. But I believe it says
Above finished ground level, above the foundation wall or slab and other points of support.
that's not as clear as I was hoping. I'm going to have to look in the commentary. In the commentary, I believe it specifies whether it's above grade and above foundation wall, or if it's an or. So you can either do it one or the other. But I'll find that out for you in a minute.
No or in there.
What was that, sir?
There's no or in there.
No or. So yeah, the code in and of itself just says and. So as of right there, without the commentary, it's both. But basically, your weed pole doesn't do any good if there's not flashing there, right? So, well, here's kind of what we're talking about a little bit, I guess. Now, this is not exactly, because my guess on this, I don't know where the foundation wall ends or starts. There's no telling. This could be just a little knee wall around the house. But where are we flashing on this?
Under that road lock.
We know for sure where it's flashing got to go. Yeah. So assuming this isn't a foundation wall, assume studs go all the way down to about right there. So first course above grade, we need flashing down there. Any flashing up here?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So this is essentially acting as a sill.
Right.
And then you'd want to flash that like you would a window. So let's get a diagram going here. So this is from the Brick Industry Association. This particular diagram I do not believe exactly like this is in the code book, but there's a similar one. So here we got, say it's a knee wall, cement board siding up here. We see this all the time in the new houses I'm doing. This gives us all sorts of good details here. One, don't caulk your cement board where it meets the flashing. We'll talk about that in a minute. But where's the flashing going here? You see flashing coming right here, going up, and then the house wrap's coming down top of it. So this is your sill flashing coming down. And then it says, where's your weep? Well, your weep might come out in between a joint and the mortar on your sill. Usually what I see is they take this and go down to right here. Flashing comes down, out right there, and then your weep's right there. That's usually what I see, rather than coming out between a joint and the sill.
Isn't that sill flashing really designed to hold the mortar bed for the sill?
Well, yeah, I'm not sure how they're doing that when they bring it all the way down there.
Same way. They just
Same, just all mortar, yeah.
Because how else would you hold up the sill?
Yeah, well, sometimes you don't. We got some pictures. I mean, how many of you see your sill sloped at 15 degrees? We'll get to that thing here. We got a code about that coming up. So the sill right here at a window or just on a ledge, this is supposed to be a 15-degree slope. We usually see it at a flat out one right there. So
There should be flashing on top of that, right? On top of that slope?
yeah, so this right here would probably be like a metal flashing, just L flashing that comes down.
That's probably
I
what
see it
the
all the time
flashing
without-
is not holes.
Sorry, I got a couple people. What was that?
That's probably the flashing that you will never see.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's never there.
I've seen it more recently, but I've seen it installed really bad. There's a lot of the track builders now, when they have a little brick knee wall, they are putting the flashing there, so that's good. But the one I did last week, rather than being L flashing, had Z flashing, which then took this part and flipped it up like that.
There you go.
So now all the water pools right there. And then of course they sealed up on top of that.
Yeah.
But, so that was lovely. I was like, yeah, take all that Z off and put the L back on. Come on. So these are the two spots we're seeing flashing, right? This is your probably metal flashing. This is probably rubber membrane down there, helping to hold in the mortar bed. Get your good 15-degree slope on your sill, and I'll be happy on that one. This is actually in the codes. It's a similar diagram, just not as pretty. Here's the interesting thing. This is kind of for windows. So say you have a window here. What do they require right here?
Caulk.
Yeah, caulk. I'll go back. Oh, sorry. Yeah, they want you to caulk that gap, and that's rarely done, at least rarely done right. They do want you to seal up where that window meets the sill.
Another sill flashing goes on.
All right, so here's an example of what a sill flashing. You've been wondering, what are you talking about sill flashing? This is kind of what the sill flashing would look like, this membrane right here. And as we said, you could help put some mortar in there to tilt your sill up. But then you got to have weeps. So then in this case, your weeps would be coming out right here in between the joint and the mortar. Minimum 15 degrees recommended. That's what the Brick Association says.
What does code say about the slope, the 15 degrees?
I don't think it specifies, does it? Nope. So we got the Brick Association on our side saying, here's how you should install a brick.
So you say recommend?
I would say any manufacturer of brick is going to go by the Brick Association's installation guidelines. You can say the manufacturer says it should be 15 degrees. They may or may not change it, but not change it. Here's where this becomes an issue, though. This is a little bit older house. We inspected. But we got up right here, looking at this window over top the entrance. And we had a couple issues. One, this picture doesn't show it real good, but my camera was held crooked. But this is actually sloping back, and you see it not sealed. So we had water running back behind the brick, and of course back in the early 2000s, they didn't flash anything right, or do weep bolts right. So that's your trim of your front door right there. You got rusty lintel, rotted all the door casing, the trim, all the pieces, because the water was literally being dumped off the sill back under the window. This was an interesting one. This house was probably 20 years old, and I think they bricked over something else. I don't think it was brick original.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it. It looks like.
They came back after the fact and decided they wanted to brick the front. That's what best I could tell.
So what kind of foundation is holding up the brick?
No. Red Georgia clay. I'm sure. Yeah. Yeah, so as far as like brick ledges, that's something that sometimes we can see, sometimes we can't see, but yeah. Brick ledge would be installed at the bottom. Usually when they're pouring the foundation, they bring the little piece out, lower than the foundation, or lower than the slab, and it's for the brick to rest on. Man, I've had a bunch where they didn't put anything underneath there, and the whole veneer was coming down.
If you put a steel lintel in there, you know over a course of time that's going to rust.
Even corrosion resistant can eventually corrode at some point.
It only retards, it doesn't
Yep.
stop.
Even corrosion resistant. But on this house right here, this was just kind of interesting. I'm thinking about sills and slopes. Right here, they kind of create a little trough to hold all their water up against the sill of their window. Like that's not the way. Yeah. So just going back to what I said, this does need to be sealed up. You see a lot of these where the vinyl window comes down right on top of the brick. This usually is not going to be sloped 15 degrees as long as it's not negative. I'm not going to make too big a deal about it, but they do need to seal that up. Usually it looks kind of ugly the way they do it, but you don't want big gaps there. Just let the water go right back behind the brick veneer. Yeah, there it is. Sealed. All right. If you're looking at this, what's wrong here?
No sidewalls.
Yeah. Any roof-to-wall intersection, we should be able to see some flashing. Because we're not talking about the rubber membrane flashing at that point. We're talking about our counter flashing or our step flashing. So there's none of that here. Get a little close up. I mean, nothing. Now there might be something underneath that shingle. Actually, no, there wasn't. Underneath that shingle was just OSB. Yeah, so nothing. Nothing there. That's a big issue there.
So you didn't have flashing behind the brick, because doesn't that look like just a narrow strip of shingle? Is the flashing underneath that piece of shingle?
Are you talking about metal flashing there or the actual, like, so we probably have some flashing here because we got a weep, right?
So did it come and turn out underneath that top shingle? Because that looks like a decorative cover over the flashing.
Yeah, they might have done. Well, no. If they did, there was a hole in it because there was OSB right there where my finger was. So who knows? Who knows? But at the very least, they need counter flashing. At bare minimum. As we saw, this is specified under figure 703721. Counter flashing is specified. So. Gee. That's not doing much good.
Why'd you pull it off?
You know I was getting the call from that listing agent, right, that afternoon. My buyer says you ripped the flashing off their roof.
It wasn't like that before.
I mean, does anyone else get those calls or am I the only one? All right. I had one a while back. Listing agent calls up. Why'd you loosen my client's toilet? Ma'am, what are you talking about? My client says that the toilet in their whole bath wasn't loose before you got there, and then you said the report was loose, so you must have loosened it. I said, ma'am, you think I have nothing better to do than go around with a wrench and loosen the bolts on your client's toilet? Like, come on now, come on. I said they hadn't used that bath in who knows how long, and gee, anyway, we get those calls. Part of being an inspector. All right. Well, how do y'all feel about this? Pretty steep slope. That's steeper than the camera than it actually is probably, but pretty steep slope. Got our counter flashing.
Maybe.
What was that?
Maybe.
Maybe, yeah.
You got step flashing.
This is interesting. At one point, they had kind of stepped it up. You see there's some sealant here. And instead, they decided just to a lot faster run one big strip all the way down, right, than to do step flashing. But I mean, down here, technically, the nice way would be to see them cut that counter flashing into the grout lines of the brick, right? You cut it in, and you bend it back, and you caulk it. I've seen that 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, I have a million homes.
And it was done not by a roofer. It was done by a chimney sweep who really knew what he was doing. He didn't want to have to come back out and fix any chimney leaks down the road. And so he knew what to do. He
You
knew
won't
the right
see
way.
the counterflash.
You won't see
that was
tuck
there
pointing around.
Prior didn't do that either.
Oh no, the previous counterflashing step, but it didn't go into joints. It was just caulked on. Caulked on, yeah. Yeah, I mean, if this is well sealed, I'm not gonna pick at it.
Really? You don't, I mean, you don't say anything about that because that caulk's not gonna last.
Nothing lasts. I'm not talking, and I'll treat brand new house different than an older house, okay? Obviously. Brand new house, I'm gonna be a lot pickier. Because this is the opportunity for the buyer not to have to pay to fix, I mean, the home buyer not to have to pay to fix it. The builder should be paying to fix it, right? So I'm gonna be a lot pickier. If it's an older, a little bit older house, then, geesh, we wrote up every kind of little thing. So this is kind of the same thing. Once again, this does not go into the grout, but it's stepped up. But this is the issue up here. I don't like this right here. That scares the dickens out of me right there. Why? They've created a little ledge for all the water to come down on top of the brick ledge. So in other words, the siding is going to be set back a good 3-4 inches.
Isn't there kick-out flashes?
No kick-out flashing, no nothing up there.
It's a kick-in flashing.
Kick-in flashing, right. Meant to collect water.
If that's hardy plank, the manufacturer's installation instructions tell them that they should hold that siding off of that roof at least an inch.
Yeah, we're getting there. We're gonna get in the hardy plank. We got time still, I guess, but we'll get into all the cement boards.
Was there a diverter flashing at the bottom of that above the gutter?
There is a weak attempt at one right there. May or may not be effective. We got a whole bunch to do on that. Oh, here's a good one. Woo! Diverter shingle, that's right. You don't need a diverter flash, you got a diverter shingle. Now, what else are you noticing here besides the obvious that there's no kick out? No flashing visible. Yeah. A whole bunch of stuff going on here. My biggest thing was they installed the brick on top of the shingles.
Yeah,
that's right. That's why you do it.
Helps give it traction, right? Install it right on top there. Yeah.
very attractive.
Yeah. That's going to be fun to replace that roof. I mean, this is what it looked like, but yeah, brick went right on top of the shingles. Brand new $500,000 home.
And they
Was
provide
it really
nice water.
brand new?
Oh, yeah. How about this? That guardrail's not going anywhere. What do you do when you have to replace that rail eventually? Come on.
Even a little pressure.
Or this one's my favorite. That's the brick guy saying, not my problem. Not my problem. Oh, gee. What are you going to do?
How easy is it to get a hose on that?
Another thing you're noticing up here, you got any flashing up here?
No,
Nah,
that's how it normally is.
Vita caulk, that's Vita silicone. Yeah. All right, now we got a whole section just on flashing here, because the brick had its own flashing. Now we're going to do some more flashing. I'll stop this stuff. I don't know why. I'm going to try to figure out who came up with the idea that a wood drip edge was a good idea. It was installed on so many houses in the 90s here around here, up in the early 2000s maybe. And dadgummit, if every one of them hasn't completely rotted out, man, who came up with that thing? That was a good idea. My goodness. All right, flashing. So we got this general flashing section. It says approved corrosion-resistant flashing shall be installed in a manner to prevent entry of water into the wall cavity or penetration of water to the building structural framing components. So, don't let it in the wall cavity, don't let it get to the framing. The flashing shall extend to the surface of the exterior wall finish. Now notice, this was not underneath the brick section, because the brick has its own section, so it didn't say all the flashing on the brick has to always come to the surface. That rubber membrane we sometimes don't see. Anyway, so we got the following locations where we should see flashing. 1, exterior window and door openings. At intersection of chimney with walls. Under masonry, wood, or metal copings and sills. So masonry sills, talked about that. continuously above all projecting wood trim. That seems pretty straightforward to me. I mean, last time I checked, that's written in English. And the builders, man, I don't know.
It's the siding guy.
Yeah. Where porches, decks, or stairs meet the house, at wall roof intersections, at built-in gutters, which I do not see down here hardly ever. They're expensive. Real high-end stuff, more popular up north, I believe, but not down the lane. Anyone see them down here?
No.
Yeah, one? Yeah. They get the fascia installed too high. Yeah, we've seen that a time or two. You seen one, maybe?
I've seen it brick over gutter,
Okay.
because the gutter guy got there first.
Oh, brick over gutter, okay. That's not what we're talking about, but, but no, I hear you, I hear you. All right. So, right off the bat, I want to talk about, we say over doors and windows. It's the first item on that list. Cement board siding. We have here a vinyl self-flashing window.
That's a good question.
What do y'all think about this? Because I'll tell you what, when I first started inspecting, this got under my skin and I went on a rampage trying to fight it, and the builders laughed at me. They laughed me off a lot. So what we got here is we have the window hopefully detailed like we talked before with the house wrap and the flashing tape and all that. Assume all that's done right. Then we got siding coming down. There's hopefully a flange that comes around the window like this. But there's nothing sealing here, nothing here, no metal head flashing, none of that. How do you feel about that? You okay with it?
The county inspector.
Manufacturer says it's okay. That is correct. If you can actually get a detailed enough instruction set, some of them have, once again, like 3 sentences, and they don't tell you anything about how to install the windows. But if you actually get one that has some detailed instructions, they say that's fine. They do. I don't like it because of this right here. You think about coming down the side, that water's come off the top of the window, you're directing water back behind your siding on purpose. And, get me riled up here. I'm going to start preaching. What's this right here?
That's the window.
We got siding. What's been done to that siding in the field?
Cut.
Cut edge of siding in the field. What's the manufacturer of the siding say about all cut edges? Got to be treated or painted. Sealed up, right? Not sealed, but sealed in the sense of being painted. Are those ever painted?
Never.
No. That's what I fought this when I first started, and then I gave up. I don't even look at it anymore. I just went, whatever.
I battled with Rockhaven Homes on a new construction in Brookhaven earlier, well, I guess it was last year. Going through the entire exterior of the property, and I commented to the client that the windows look just like this. And I told him, I said, why aren't they sealed? Well, he says, if I seal it, the manufacturer voids the warranty.
Yeah.
I said, I can't see how it would void the warranty. He says, well, it blocks their weak tubes, their weak poles. And I says, well, the weak poles are at the bottom. They're not on the sides.
I think he was trying to get out having to do anything.
The client actually ended up hiring a painter to come out and seal them. So it is the only house in that subdivision that I know of that's got sealed ones.
Yeah. So he was just saying that the builder said that potentially he could void the manufacturer's warranty if he sealed up around the windows. And I said, well, he may or may not have been telling the truth there. We don't know. We didn't have the instructions. But every now and then I do see where they have sealed it up, like your client, and they hired a painter to do that. And
It's a different window.
it is a little bit different, yeah. You're right, it is a different window. But I've sometimes seen the other type, self-flashing, that have been sealed as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. There's a whole bunch of caulk. Look horrible. Look
How
horrible.
wide is the joint between the siding and the window?
Say that again.
How wide is the joint between the siding and the window?
Oh, right, on that one?
Yeah, the vertical joint.
You can't tell.
No, that one, there's a channel that's in place.
channel, they call it where the channel was.
Yeah, I don't know.
There's a drainage channel?
Yeah, there should be a drainage channel on this one. Yeah. Anyway, all right, so we're talking about flashing. Here's a couple places I always find problems on new houses in particular. They decide they want a little roof over top of that back patio, and the builder puts that on. Where is there going to be an issue right here?
Roof to wall.
Kick out. You got a little piece there.
So right here. So I'm not even going to kickouts yet, because we're going to jump over to chapter 9 to get the kickouts in a second. But I always get on a ladder and look at the corners of both sides of the roof, or a front porch, both of them. Because I'll usually see something like this, where they cut the flashing too short. There's a hole in the siding. Half the time I still see house wrap, half the time this is bare OSB. And I'm like, well, that's going to cause a problem. So that's a hot spot. Check that. Once again, front porch. Go around to the corner of the front porch. Hopefully don't fall off.
That's nice.
Close up. We got holes in our house wrap, holes in the sides, holes in the trim, holes in everything. Yeah. Brand new house. Brand new house. It doesn't matter anymore, man. It doesn't matter. This was real common in the 90s.
It's almost flashing, it's almost.
You see this coming across. We got a head flashing up there. But I don't know why it was. Every house in Atlanta built in the 90s, they cut it short. And then the miter joints on your trim rotted out at every single window. Thankfully, the builders, at least a lot of them I'm working with, have mostly, if they're using wood trim, fixed this to where they bend it down over the edges and actually bring it past the miter joints. But man, why in the world, right? All right, so this is one of the biggest builders in Atlanta. Maybe the biggest builder in Atlanta. What's that? Maybe the biggest builder in Atlanta right now. Right off the bat, you see anything that's worrisome? This is a tricky one.
Wall bracelet. I'm assuming that's a two.
We're not talking about wall bracing today, so I'm going to skip that, but we'll go.
Joints over your windows.
Yeah, so what's in between all these little windows?
Pieces of wood.
They got pieces of wood. This is not composite. This is not cement board.
Okay.
Little pieces of wood sticking up in between every trim pieces in between every window. Is there any flashing over top of that? No, I got self-flashing windows. Okay, well, what about the trim? When they do vertical pieces of trim like this, even if they paint the cut edge at the top, you know that 4 years from now, that's all going to be rotten out. Hands down. This is, like I said, this is one of the biggest builders in Atlanta. They're doing this on just about every house they build.
That's new?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. So I see this on a weekly basis because I do a lot of their houses. I write this up on a weekly basis, and I'm like, all right, who do I need to go to have you all address this before I get there? Let's fix the problem. But yeah, that'll all rot out.
So the issue is there should be no seams, no butt joints.
No, the issue is that you have projecting wood trim with no flashing over it. You got wood trim there, and 703.8 number 4 says flashing over all projecting wood trim. So, yeah, write that up, get that fixed. I mean, there's close to this. That's not the last. Same thing here. This is picky. The builders hate it when I write this up. Say, oh, you're being picky. I'm like, it's all going to rot out. I see it on the 10-year-old houses. All these little trim pieces where they got to step down the foundation wall, they all rot out because there's no flashing over them. They cut in with a light coat of paint over top and it rots all out. I'm like, I don't want my buyer having to fix that. Flash it.
It never happened.
What do we have here? We got, this is interesting. This is outside your normal just box on a slab type thing. I mean, it might be a box on a slab still, but there's a little bit of an interesting architectural detail here. So this little pergola over top of the garage door. But if I'm thinking flashing, what am I going to do?
You mean for that little decorative trim? Which point? It's not structural.
Not structural. You're right.
Pleasure board is slashed on it, or do each of the rafters just butt up to the?
Yeah, so with this one, they basically have what looks like two 2x12s or maybe bigger than that going across. These are just butted up against, so they're not going into the stones. But the connection points on the other side, I want to see, what did you do? Did you just nail it to the stone? Like, how is this attached? I just want to investigate that. So I get around to the side, I'm looking, I'm like, okay, so you obviously nailed it to something there. You got essentially a 4x4 that's nailed to a 1x, looks like that here. What's the 1x attached to that they just nailed to stone? Get up close, here's what it looks like looking down. So they have all this, but here's what worries me. This is an exposed 2x4 that's poking through the stone with no flashing over it. They just scabbed 2x4s onto, probably off of, to be honest with you, probably just off of the OSB. Maybe they had a stud behind it, I don't know, but they scabbed enough 2x4s and then hung the big fertile off that. This is now an open penetration into the stone with no flashing over it.
The biggest issue here is more how it's attached than in itself.
Attachment, but also
The security of it, because
security you don't want to fall on anybody.
it's going to, it eventually, without being addressed, it's going to,
Yeah.
it's going to.
But also, you don't have any flash or any way to keep water from going into your garage wall here. And I don't want water going in that garage wall. So we're talking about flashing and siding day. That's why I'm bringing this one up particularly, that the security of the attachment would also be in question, no doubt. All right, we're going to jump over to chapter 9 real quick, and we'll come back and do cement, board, and stone in just a minute. We're going to step it up a little bit here. This is where we get our kick-out flashing code, which is probably the code I use more than any other. 905283. Base flashing against a vertical sidewall shall be continuous or step flashing, and shall be a minimum of 4 inches in height, 4 inches in width, and shall direct water away from the vertical sidewall and onto the roof and or into the gutter. And James Hardy provides us with a nice little picture and their installation instructions and says this is required by code. Every building.
You can go back one.
Oh, yep. Yeah. I don't know why. Lennar sometimes will put these on, but by and large, any other track builders are rarely ever see them on there. And I don't understand why. This is pretty straightforward, and it's easy. It's not hard to do. It causes a lot of trouble when you don't put these on. Like this. If you're looking at a house and you see all that water down below the gutter there, you know you got an issue. This is our lumpy stucco too, so that makes me real nervous.
Do you ever see kick-out flashing on stone veneer?
I got a picture. Yeah, we're coming up. This is my house. You know that cobbler doesn't have any shoes for his kids type thing? Because I'm too busy telling them what's wrong with their house, not keeping it with my house. So yeah, this was nasty. This is my chimney right here. I was like, oh man, this is a disaster. So don't judge the quality of my work, but I did put a little kick out in there and replaced it with Hardy. And my chimney's 36 feet tall, is a problem. And I got to go home today and replace the top 4 pieces on the back side of the chimney, so I can paint it next week when my kids are on fall break. I said, kids, we're not going to Disneyland. We're painting the house. They're real happy with me right now. All right, here's stone. Here's what it usually looks like. Talk about, do you ever see the kick out with the stone? This is problematic on a number of levels. Not only is it not directing into the gutter, it's directing it the opposite way. That's not good. Not good. There you go.
Son of a gun.
What else do we got there besides the kick out?
Never
We got our weep screed. Woo! Weep screed coming down there. So imagine that. Yep.
Wow.
So there you go. Can be done. And the builder says, oh, you can't do it on stone. Oh yeah, I can.
Let me take a picture of that.
Yeah. There is a way to do it. All right. Here's what happens when you don't have it. Cement board. It's cement board. It can't rot. Well, it can deteriorate. This is an interesting one here. Put enough caulk will fix anything, right? Just caulk enough and create your own drip. Your own kick out. Here's a good, brand new house here on this one.
Are you kidding?
Yeah. More than one way to create one, I guess.
Is there a gutter at all there?
No gutter on that section. It was like a little gable coming down over top of a porch roof. So it's like about that long, so they didn't even decide to put a gutter on it. Yep. Maybe that's why I said, we don't need a kick out, so we didn't have a gutter. It said it has to get into the gutter, right? Here's my favorite of all time. I wrote this up, missing a kick-out flash. And the builder says, all right, we got it fixed. I do a lot of re-inspections for clients. Because after they see all the stuff right up on the siding and the roofing, they're like scared to death. And they're like, you got to come back and make sure you actually did all this. So I come back out. Oh, yeah, we got the kick-out on. I get up there. I'm like, oh, my goodness. I don't even know where to start.
There you go.
This is probably the most, I said the kick out was the one I quote unquote the most. This is actually the one I quote the most. I do, I don't know how many, but I just have never, ever, ever seen a house with the drip edge installed with the code. Just like with the stucco, you never see it. Drip edge. They might have a drip edge, but the code's more specific than just there's got to be a drip edge. It tells you how it's supposed to go on. And so let's see what it says. It says, once required. There's some code officials around Georgia that don't believe that's in there because they don't require it. And I'm like, it doesn't matter whether you like it or not. It's still required. State minimum.
Only on a new house. That's what I hear.
All right, so you all know that. You brought that up. So I'm going to address it real quick. The code does specify, I don't have the code right up here right now, but the code does specify in the next code, this is required on all re-roofs that are done, and that started in Georgia, January 1st, 2014.
Right. How do you do a two-layer?
Two-layer?
How do you put it on a two-layer? Don't they have to take the shingles off of the edge to redo it?
No.
You're not allowed to shingle over shingles.
He said a re-roof, not a roof over.
You are? Yeah. Just tell the buyer they don't want a re-roof. They don't want 2 layers. That's a good question. But so it is required. The joints. So you don't have one piece that stretches all the way around the house, right? So when they butt up against each other, they don't just butt up. They lap over 2 inches minimum. That's required by code. It must extend up the roof deck a minimum of 2 inches. So if they install their fascia 4 inches below the bottom of the roof deck, and they try to attach that drip edge on, what's going to happen? Can't hit the roof deck. Or if it's out here, which I see, they cut the roof deck too short. And your fascia's way out here, and they try and put the drip edge on, can't even touch the roof deck. It's got to extend up the roof deck 2 inches. The reason for that is it's supposed to be nailed to the roof deck, not the fascia. If you put a bunch of nail holes on your exposed fascia, what's going to happen? Rot it out. So put it underneath the tar paper. Has to be a fastener with an approved fastener, which normally will be a corrosion-resistant roof nail. Perfect. I see them attached all the time with the little staples that they use to attach the tar paper. And they try and drive that through the metal drip edge, and it's falling off the entire house. Blowing off in the wind. It needs to be installed under the underlayment, whether it's tar paper or one of the fancy new underlayments. It needs to go up underneath the underlayment at the eaves. At the gables, it goes over the underlayment. There's a reason for that. Well, there's all sorts of problems here. But one, you see, there's no way that can touch that. This needs to go 2 inches up your roof deck. I got a problem there. You can buy a drip edge with a real long flange on it, like a 6 or 8 inch flange. I had one house, the lady said, I said, yeah, you got a bunch of problems. She said, I want to come do a re-inspection. Came back and did the re-inspection, brand new house. Said, so I got everything done. Go up, it's like, your drip edge is all wrong still. I said, all right, what do I need to do? I told him, here's what needs to happen. He says, well, I can't make it reach. She said, get a bigger flange on there. Okay. I went back to that house 8 times.
Wow. For free each time.
The buyer paid me to come back 8 times.
That's a shame.
Wow. And said, I'm going to get the builder to pay for it. And of course the builder's like, I'm not paying for that. So she paid me for 8 trips out there before he got it right. I drew it on a napkin. I gave him the code in writing. I gave him diagrams. I did everything except for get up there and put it on myself. I was so tired of going out there. But no, the tar paper is going to come down. The drip edge is going to go up underneath your tar paper because water runs down roof, right? You don't want it run down your tar paper and then your flange to be up over your tar paper and run underneath behind your drip edge, right out your fascia, assuming the fascia is up there close enough to reach it. On the gables, though, you have wind-driven rain coming in from the sides. You want to hit the drip edge, go up over the drip edge onto your tar paper, back down toward the gutters. So that's why it's different depending on where you install it. Not lap 2 inches. This is why I see a lot of it. This never get caught because this is 25, 30 feet above ground probably. I mean, it's a big old tall house, but Yeah, just horrible.
Terrible.
I know a lot of folks don't get on ladders, don't get up on roofs, and that's fine. I'm not saying you should or shouldn't. I'm just saying that when I do, most of the time, I say not most of the time, a lot of the time the drip edge is missing above the gutters at the eaves because you can't see it from the ground. They'll put it on at the gables because the code, if the county even cares about it, they can see that from their truck. Like, no, the builder and the county guy aren't getting on a ladder usually, so no one can see if it's at the eaves above the gutters. And a lot of times they just leave it off. They know they can get away with it because no one's getting up there to look. What's wrong here? Lap the wrong way. Which way does water run? Uphill or downhill? Water runs down. It's going to go right behind the drip edge. If this is over top of this, then it sheds and it's just fine. Same idea with shingles. You wouldn't install lower course of shingles above the upper course. That would be a bad idea. All right, moving on, because we only got about 20 minutes here. We got two important sections. This one's not the important one. Basically, this just says that your synthetic stucco shall comply with this standard. It's got one or two other real brief codes and it moves on. How many of you are seeing this on new residential? Nobody. That's why we're skipping. Let's go to this. We're seeing a lot of this, and we got to spend some time on it, all right? This is very important to us in Atlanta because just about every house has this on. So the code breaks it down to two sections, panel siding and lap siding. Panel siding is going to be your board and batten book. Those big 4x8 sheets that are all hardy plank. That's what they're using to do a lot of the board and batten now. This is where this comes into play. Vertical and horizontal joints shall occur over framing members and shall be sealed with caulking, covered with battens, or designed to comply with our umbrella code at the beginning, 703.1. Don't let water into your wall. All right. So if I see this, is there anything I'm going to be wanting to go look at?
Horizontal joints.
What was that?
All those batten joints against well, we're at every 4 feet, where however big the sheets are.
Yeah, so we've got certainly vertical joints every 4 feet. We know that. Those are covered with a batten. That's good. Caulked up. Looks good. Where might we have a horizontal joint here? We only have 8-foot tall sections.
Across the door.
Each side of the door.
So right here we got a joint going right there. Same thing on this side because this was taller than 8 feet. So let's get a close-up of that. Whoops. Is that good or not?
Not good.
Now, according to code, it's okay. It says you can caulk the joints. What about the manufacturer? Manufacturer won't let you do that. They want any horizontal joint flashed. Period. Period. Whether there's a batten there or not, they want it flashed. Here's their detail. So this would be, here's your vertical batten scope. There's no horizontal trim or batten piece there, but they want the flashing to come out and want there to be a break. I'll get close up on this other diagram here and show you. Here's what it looks like close up. They want a gap. They don't want to butt it up. They want a gap, 1/4 inch. No caulk in that gap. They want the flashing coming out. And then you can slap your vertical batten to the top of that joint, but that's what your horizontal joint should look like. This is from James Hardie. As far as I know, we've had 3 manufacturers of cement board in Atlanta with our products. We've got James Hardie, Nichiha, and Allura. Am I right on that? Do you know of any others? Okay, there's only 3 I know of.
Chem plank, CEM plank.
Yeah, Semplank, I believe, got bought by James Hardie 2 years ago. So I believe they folded them in. So I think there's only 3. I try to make sure I'm up on all 3 of them, and for the most part, they're all the same. There's not much that one of them requires that the others say, oh no, you don't have to do that. Question, yes, in the back.
The batten that's coming down, I guess they want that to be 2 pieces there for expansion.
Yes, this would be your vertical batten going up.
So
They have a
They want that exactly.
angle joint. I'm not going to sweat it if that doesn't have a cut right there.
Okay.
I'm more worried about the joint treatment. Yeah. Yep. All right, so that's our, sorry, going back. Yeah, that's our panel siding. Now the code talks about lap siding, which is more common, at least where I'm at. Just about every house. Lap siding. Lapped a minimum of 1.25 inches, which is what most manufacturers will say as well. End joints, which is an endless, discussion on a lot of these inspector forums. How do you treat end joints on cement board? Can be sealed with caulk, installed with an H-section joint cover, or located over a strip of flashing. That's what the code says. Gotta have one of those three. All right? So, let's talk about this for a minute. Here's what it looked like if there's flashing. Usually this is a little piece of tar paper. Cut a little piece of tar paper, nail it on, then your butt joint's going to come up over top of that. Then they don't need to caulk the joint because water will be shed. All right?
Never see that.
There's a better way.
I never saw that for the longest time. Now, most of the builders in my area are doing it that way. Most of them have switched over. For good reason. We'll talk about the reason in a second, but yeah. That is a good reason. Because when they caulk them, this is what they look like 5 years later. 2 years later, maybe. They never use quality caulk, right? Is your painter going to go and buy the most expensive caulk at Home Depot? No. He's going to buy the $2 tube caulk.
Red Devil.
Yeah. And it's going to dry out in 2 years, and you got an open joint with no flashing back behind there. And then when I come inspect that house, I'm going to tell the buyer that it's a 5-year-old, 10-year-old house, hey, these joints aren't flashing iron, so the manufacturer says they should be caulked. Well, at that point, do you want a bunch of white lines on your house? No. So what do you have to do? Repaint the whole house. Why should you have to repaint the entire house at a 5-year-old house? Come on now. You shouldn't. So you do flashing behind there, eliminate all that. This is what James Hardy does say. He says pretty much use good caulk. A lot of times I'll go around, I'll spot check joints around the whole house. I like to get up on a ladder, check them above just eye level, because I know the builder might check at eye level, but the siding guy's like, no one's getting on a ladder. So I get up on a ladder, check a couple of joints a little bit up higher, and if I can, shine a flashlight in there. A lot of times it's just bare house wrap. No flashing, no caulking. Joint hasn't been treated. I'll write it up. Just to know, James Hardy has 2 different sets of installation instructions depending on where you're at. If you're pulling installation instructions, you better make sure you have the right one before you quote it to the builder. We're HZ10. That's our climate zone down here. We're not HZ5. So don't quote the northern section if you're going to tell the builder they need to do something. Some of the details here. We'll get through this pretty quick. As we talked about, my friend earlier, clearance above the roof. Don't put the cement board onto the roof. It will wick up water. And the builder says, it's not wood, it won't rot. And then I pull up a phone like this on my picture and show them. I'm like, do you want this to be your house 5 years from now? Because it will deteriorate if you put it too close to the roof. That's a real bad one. That's cement board. That's not hardboard, that's cement board. Ooh, not good. As we talked about before, over any horizontal flashing, they do not want you to caulk the siding. So all the time, over top of a door or window, wherever, they caulk up this joint. The painter doesn't know better, but he caulks it up before he paints since he's doing a good job. Every one of the cement board manufacturers says, do not do that. We want water to be able to get out. It goes back to our umbrella code. You got to have a way for water to get out at all times. If you don't, this is what happens. You see it starting to bow and it's trapping water right there, starting to deteriorate the board. That's a real bad one there. They caulked up there, caulked down here, water sat there, I guess, long enough and started to rot it down. So, every garage door is going to be caulked over top. I write everyone up on a new house. Manufacturer says, don't caulk this. Kick-out flashing, we've already talked about this, but it is it's required by all the cement board manufacturers. So even if they don't want to believe you it's in the code, manufacturers got nice pictures for you to drop in your report. Leave off a kick-out, that's what it'll do. It's not my house, but it's similar. This is the cement board just falling apart because you're missing kick-out, partly. Awful. Cement board does deteriorate. Clearance above paved surfaces. A lot of times I've seen pour the slab up over the cement board. They installed the sides first, came back into the driveway toward the end, pour the driveway slab right over top of the cement board. Water can't get out. Manufacturer doesn't allow it. Clearance. We want water to be able to get out. This is what will happen. Put a paved surface right over top of it. If you're doing a transition from cement board to some type of masonry, either your adhered stone or your brick. You're going to have a trim board, and then they want an L flashing there, so that obviously because the wood shouldn't be up against the brick. But that's the detail they provide. Same thing here, flashing at the bottom where it transitions over top of stone or a knee wall that's either going to be stone or brick, flashing there.
John, just a quick statement. That trim board, they don't specify its minimum size. I mean, you're looking at that looks like a 2x4, but some people might not like that amount, maybe a 1x1.
Yeah, I'd be happy with 1x1.
As long as there's something that gives us something.
Yeah. I think it'd look bad without it at all. I think they gotta have something there aesthetically for transition, but yeah, the size of that board is not specified. $850,000 condo. I did. Anything look suspicious here? We're talking about transitions from one to the other. Get up a little closer. They installed the brick over the cement board. It's in contact with the cement board. Not good.
What's it called?
They caulk the joint, yes. Yeah, manufacturer of cement board is going to avoid that warranty in a second. That's why I'm strict on some of this stuff. See, I'll get a couple of warranties in just a second. Clearance above ground, 6 inches, the cement board. So usually I'm looking at these foundation step downs, and a lot of times you get down here and you got dirt right up in contact with where it's stepping down on the foundation wall. I'm going to tell them to move that. A lot of houses I've seen where water came in 5 years later because the landscaper kept dumping pine straw there and the grade came up another couple inches, then you got water coming in your basement. Start with 6 inches. Takes longer for the pine straw to build up.
Each grade is not necessarily soil.
All right, we talked about ways you could go back and flash around penetrations, especially with your house wrap that's already been damaged, how you have to tear off the siding. Well, if you're willing to cut a hole in the side and block it and flash it, that could be great. It give you room to tape with flashing tape around your penetration. So say your vent that's coming through, you can go ahead and do your flashing tape. Then you cut a square in the side here. You block from either side using hardy trim, and you put a head flashing over it. This is not required by the installation instructions. This is a best practices guide. James Hardy has a big long manual that's best practices. If you really want to do it the best way, here's what you can do. But the builders hated that, so they went and said, all right, here's our actual installation instructions. It's 2 pages. We got a best practices manual that's 60 pages. So if you really want to do it right, that's the right way. So that is a good solution if you're worried about water coming in around something. See, the builder did it that way. Looks good. Usually what I see is this, right? Just barely hanging on, not caulked. You walk up and it just falls off on your hands. Like, water's coming in that in no time at all. Look at this. Look at this. They said no one's getting up there. Yeah, water's coming straight in that wall. Straight in. See, this is nice. That looks a good way. That's what they had in that little diagram there. Deck to wall. Deck shouldn't, cement board shouldn't be touching your deck. 1 to 2 inches clearance again. That's what can happen. All right. Failure to follow manufacturer's installation instructions will void the 30-year warranty. Worked with a couple warranty claims with fires. And that's what the siding companies do. They come out, the siding's barely installed up to their installation instructions. They say, yeah, you have a problem with your siding, but the warranty's been voided because the builder didn't install it right. So when I write up some of this stuff that seems a little picky on my report, I put that in there so the buyer knows they really want the builder to fix this so that they have a 30-year warranty on the new house they're buying. Just makes sense to me. I don't want it. The vinyl siding, let's just skip this, pretty much. Install according to manufacturer's instructions. If you ever see this, what's this right here?
Which one?
We're talking about this.
It looks like expansion washing. Probably.
Could be the house next door.
Low-E windows.
Yep.
Low-E windows are doing this now. You get a row of vinyl houses, sun reflects off the low-E onto the neighbor's house, makes lines up their side. This was a brand new house, hasn't even closed yet. Already damaged like that. So, nah. So yeah. All right, we got our here masonry stone. We got about 5 or 10 minutes. We're gonna cover it and we'll be out of here. All right. As we said, just like with stucco, this has never been installed right in the state of Georgia. I mean, There is one builder up my way that actually is installing it right now. Almost all the way right, for the most part. So general, when we talk about our lumpy stucco here, shall be installed according to the manufacturer's instructions. That's all you need right there. That MVMA guide, it's got more pictures, diagrams, color photos, all sorts of good stuff that you can pull up off online, drop them into your report. Any manufacturer of that stone is going to say, we're part of this association and we ascribe to their installation instructions. I researched a number of the big players around Atlanta that are supplying the builders, and every one of them said that. So, that's all you need. But the code does give us a little bit more ammo than just installation instructions. It does say clearances on exterior stud walls. The adhered masonry veneer shall be installed a minimum of 4 inches above the earth, 2 inches above paved surfaces. And it also gives us our weep screed. Corrosion-resistant screed or flashing with a vertical flange of at least 3.5 inches. That needs to go up behind the stone, 3.5 inches. Shall be installed to extend a minimum of 1 inch below the foundation plate line. So don't put it up above your sill plate. And here's how that would look. Stone coming down, 4 inches clearance if it's dirt, 2 inches if it's cement. You got your weep screed coming out the bottom to allow water to drain. Should be simple, right?
But it doesn't look right.
Should be simple. The builders never want to fix this because they say if they did this, their house would be so ugly it wouldn't sell. That's what they all tell me. And I just tell them,
Don't use it.
I say, I'm not here for aesthetics, buddy. I'm here for code. I don't care what your house looks like. I care about whether it's up to code. Talk to your architect. This is what I see all day long. No weep screed sitting on the driveway. This is actually a pretty good install. They didn't pour the driveway over the stone, which they usually do. So the stone actually comes down in the driveway, so there's at least a chance water to drain. So that's not too bad. Here's a weep screed, but what's going on? So this is your driveway down here. That's your weep screed. Is that going to drain any water out?
No, we call them.
I guess they came back later and put that fix on the looks.
Probably.
Not sure if it's
Yeah.
instructed.
They should have left a gap or something there so water would come out. It's not doing its job. Here's what a weep screed look. I'm actually happy with that. What? They got at least, not 2 inches, they have an inch clearance above their paved surface. They got a weep screed at the bottom. Great. Makes me happy. Going down to the dirt all the time. Just right into the dirt.
All the time.
Never will fix it. What about roofs? Install that stone right on top of your shingles. Is that a good idea?
Oh, yeah, they do it all the time. Everybody's doing it.
This is from the MVMA guide. 2 inches above roofs. I write it up and put the picture in there. Builder never goes back and fixes it. Not my issue at that point, unless the client invites me in to twist some arms and get a little more aggressive. But yeah, 2 inches above roofs with the weep screed. This is what I usually see. Wow. So they might have had 2 inches clearance and someone said, that looks bad, go fill that up. That's what it looks like happened to me. Just all day long, right on top of the shingle. All right. If you have self-flashing windows, do you need a metal head flashing if it's manufactured stone? So we know with the cement board, we already talked about this, right? I'm not going to worry about it. Self-flashing window?
I think when you're looking in the, I've read through these instructions so
Yeah.
many damn times. And a lot of times when it talks about window details, it says see manufacturer's installation instructions. Window manufacturer's instructions.
It does. Now, he's saying the MBMA usually says when it comes to window details, look at the window manufacturer's instructions. Does that help us a lot of the time?
Yeah.
No. There's usually 3 lines of text for their installation instructions. So I don't know. I'm still...
And these vinyl windows, you see the big ass gaps between the window and the stone. There's nothing, you don't see any flashing over the,
No.
over the head.
No flashing at the head
Nothing
usually.
at the seal, nothing.
Nope.
They're just stuck in there.
That's right. I'm torn on this one, to be honest with you. There's been sometimes when I write it up because there's no head flashing, of course the boat's not gonna do anything anyway, but, then there's sometimes I'm like, gee, I'd never seen it, I don't know what to do, to be honest with you. I don't know. Yeah, all day long like this, just no flashing at the top.
I think the safe thing to do is write it up and let the
Yeah.
builder bitch at you about it.
Yeah. 3 minutes, Richard, we good?
Yeah.
3 minutes, okay. Vertical transitions are detailed in there. Usually I can look back and see bare OSB around the window, not sealed up at all. That's not a good thing. This is a vertical view. If you're looking down, this was your window, and you're looking down from the top, and this might be your trim around the window or whatever. They do want, whether it's trim or window, 3/8 inch joint with a backer rod and caulking and this, that, and the other, and never been done in Georgia. So, that's your MBMA. I think that's all pretty much I got, yep. So that kind of covers, you got chapter 7 in today, all right? That's a deep dive on chapter 7. Y'all hung in there pretty good, I'd say. So, thank y'all for coming here.